Hey guys, tonight we are taking a trip back in time, about 2,500 years, to a place bathed in golden sunlight, smelling of olive groves and sea salt. Welcome to ancient Greece. Now, this isn't your typical heroic adventure. Tonight, you're not a Spartan warrior or a wise philosopher. No, you're something far more precarious. You're a woman, an exceptionally beautiful one, and frankly, in this world, you might not survive the first stages because of that. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop your city and the time in the comments below. It's always a little magical to think about us all, scattered across the globe, sharing this quiet moment. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is not a sight, but a feeling. It is the warmth. A gentle, persistent warmth that seems to seep into your bones, carrying the scent of wild thyme, sun-baked earth, and a distant, salty tang from the Aegean Sea. You are here. You have just opened your eyes to the world as a newborn in a small, whitewashed house on the slope of a hill overlooking the water. As you grow, so does your awareness. Life in your small corner of the Greek world is governed by simple, ancient rhythms. The rising and setting of the sun, the turning of the seasons, the festivals for the gods. But above all, it is governed by an obsession, an idea so powerful it shapes art, poetry, philosophy, and daily life. The idea of kalos, beauty. You hear it in the way the old men praise the perfect proportions of the new temple being built in the Agora. You see it in the statues of the gods that line the sacred ways, their marble forms impossibly perfect, impossibly serene. In your world, beauty is not just a pleasant quality, it is a virtue, a divine sign. The Greeks had a word for it, kalokogathia. It is a concept that links the beautiful, kalos, with the good. Agathos. The prevailing belief is that a beautiful exterior must house a noble and virtuous soul. A handsome man is assumed to be brave. A beautiful woman, pure, on the surface. This sounds wonderful. A world that equates beauty with goodness. You wonder what could possibly go wrong. You are about to find out. By the time you are a teenager, you understand. You are not just pretty. You are that girl. The one whose name is whispered when she walks through the market. When you go to the public fountain to fill your hydria with water, the other girls fall silent. Some watch you with open admiration, others with a jealousy so sharp you can almost feel it prickle your skin. Men, young and old, stop their conversations to stare. Their gazes can feel like a heavy cloak, sometimes appreciative, sometimes appraising. Like a merchant inspecting a fine vase before making an offer. Your mother teaches you to keep your eyes downcast, to wrap your himadion, your cloak, just so, to obscure the lines of your face and figure. It is a strange contradiction. You live in a culture that worships beauty, yet you are taught to hide your own. It is as if you are carrying a lit torch through a field of dry grass. The torch is magnificent, but you are constantly terrified of dropping it. One evening, you sit before a polished bronze mirror. The reflection is dim, wavy, not like the clear glass mirrors of a future you cannot imagine. But you can see your own face, the symmetry that poets would later write about, the large, almond-shaped eyes. You take a bit of coal, a dark powder, and hesitate. You have heard that in some circles, a unibrow is considered the height of fashion, a sign of aristocracy and intelligence. Some women even glue on little patches of goat hair to achieve the look. You look at the space between your own brows, and for a moment, consider connecting them. Maybe it would make you look more serious, less distracting. You put the coal down. This is the first crack in the beautiful facade. You begin to realize your beauty is not really yours. It belongs to everyone else. It is a public commodity to be discussed, judged, and desired. It opens doors. Yes, the baker gives you an extra honey cake. The stern-faced weaver smiles at you, but it also builds walls. The other girls your age are wary of you, Is it because they dislike you? Or because their mothers have warned them that a friend too beautiful will steal away any potential suitors? It is a lonely pedestal, and from this vantage point, you start to hear the other stories. The darker ones, not just the grand myths of heroes, but the hushed tales your nursemaid tells you when your mother is out of earshot. Stories of girls, beautiful girls, who attracted the wrong kind of attention, not just from mortals, but from them, the ones who live on Mount Olympus. And you learn the most important, most terrifying lesson of all. Being beautiful is a gift from the gods, but being too beautiful is a challenge to them. And the gods do not take kindly to challenges. Historians still debate the true agency of women in ancient Greece. Were they merely silent figures in the background of a man's world, their lives dictated by fathers and husbands? Or did they, especially those of high status and renowned beauty, wield a subtle but potent influence from within the confines of their homes? The surviving texts, written almost exclusively by men, paint a conflicting picture, leading us to wonder if a woman like you was a queen in her own small court, or just a more valuable bird in a gilded cage. For you, sitting in the fading light, the cage is beginning to feel very real. That feeling of being in a cage does not fade. If anything, it solidifies. Its bars forged from the very standards that define you. So, let us take a moment to really understand the blueprint of this beautiful prison. What, exactly, did it mean to be a certified beauty in ancient Greece? It is not as simple as having a pretty face. It was a checklist, a specific and unforgiving formula. And you, my friend, seem to have been born with all the answers checked. Let us start from the top. Your hair, it spills over your shoulders, and in the lamplight, it glimmers not with the deep, glossy black of most of the women in your town, but with a shade of sun-bleached gold. Blonde, the hair of heroes and goddesses. Homer himself described the beautiful Helen as having fair hair, and the goddess of love, Aphrodite, was often called Golden Aphrodite. The problem, most Greeks were not naturally blonde. This made fair hair an instant, exotic marker of supreme beauty. You have seen other women try to achieve it, rinsing their hair for hours in vinegar or lemon juice and sitting in the harshest sunlight, hoping to coax a few lighter strands into existence. Some even use a strange, liquid powder imported from the north, but yours is natural, a fact that earns you both reverence and a quiet, simmering resentment. Next, your skin. The ideal is not a sun-kissed, healthy glow. No, that is for farmhands and laborers. The pinnacle of female beauty is a startling, almost luminous pallor. It is a status symbol. Pale skin means you belong to a class of women who do not have to toil outdoors. It signifies a life lived in the cool, shaded confines of the home. To maintain this, you, and many other high-status women, have a little terracotta pot filled with a fine white powder called simethion. You dust it lightly over your face, neck, and arms, creating a smooth, matte, pearlescent finish. It works wonderfully. It also happens to be made from white lead. You have no idea, of course, that with every application, you are absorbing a slow, subtle poison into your skin. It is just one of the many small, painful prices of perfection. Then comes the face itself, a study in divine geometry. Your face is a perfect oval, your jawline soft but defined. Your lips are full, but not too full. The Cupid's bow is clearly etched, and your eyes, larger and set wide apart, are shaped like almonds, framed by dark lashes. At the centerpiece, the feature that sculptors would kill for, is your nose. It is the famous Greek nose, a perfectly straight line that flows down from your forehead with no discernible break at the bridge. You look at the statues in the temple, the profiles of Athena and Hera, and you see your own nose staring back at you. It is as if your face was sculpted by the same divine hand. This is the strange feedback loop you live in. Art is not just imitating life. It is dictating it. The sculptures of Praxiteles, the paintings on the finest pottery, they are not just pretty pictures. They are instruction manuals. They set an almost unattainable standard that every woman is judged against. And what of the body? The male ideal is clear. hard, muscular, the body honed for athletics and war, every sinew and muscle glorified in bronze and marble. The female ideal is different. It is softer. Your form is not one of an athlete. It is a body of gentle curves, with high, rounded hips, a soft stomach, and a high, full bust. There is a delicacy to the ideal, a lack of sharp angles. It is a body that speaks of fertility and grace, designed not for action, but for being admired from within the home. The Roman poet Ovid, who inherited much of Greek culture, would later write entire books on the art of beauty, advising women on everything from hairstyles to how to walk gracefully. This was not just unspoken pressure, it was a codified science, and here lies a point of endless debate among historians. Did the art reflect reality, or did it create it? Were the sculptors and painters of ancient Greece simply capturing the likenesses of the most stunning women of their time? Or were they, in fact, creating a fantasy, a kind of composite, an idealized super beauty that blended the best features of many different people into a whole that no single living woman could ever truly embody? The consensus leans toward the latter. The statues were not portraits. They were aspirations. They were the photoshopped magazine covers of their day, setting a bar that was, for almost everyone, impossible to reach, except for you, as you stand there, tracing the line of your own profile in the dim reflection of the bronze. You do the mental checklist. Golden hair, check. Pale skin, check. Straight nose, almond eyes, soft curves, check, check, check. You have not just scraped by or managed to mimic a few of the required traits. You are, from head to toe, the living, breathing incarnation of the ideal. You are the statue come to life, and as this realization settles in, it does not bring a thrill of pride. It brings a cold, creeping dread in a world that punishes any deviation from the norm. Being this perfectly, impossibly normal might just be the most abnormal, and therefore the most dangerous thing you can be. Your beauty is not just a gift anymore. It is a statement. And it is a statement that you will spend your entire life trying to live up to and live down. You begin to realize that your physical appearance is not just a part of who you are. It is a defining label that precedes you. People do not see a girl. They see beauty. This label comes with a heavy set of unwritten rules and expectations. You are expected to be graceful, modest, and quiet. Your beauty is your primary virtue, and that is assumed to be a reflection of your inner character. This is the core of kalokagothia, the belief that the beautiful is also the good. So, if you are beautiful, you must be virtuous. If you were ever to act in a way that was seen as ungraceful, loud, or improper, the transgression would be doubly shocking. It would not just be bad behavior. It would be a betrayal of the promise your own face made to the world. The pressure is immense. You feel like you are constantly on stage, performing the role of the beautiful girl. Every gesture is scrutinized. Every word is weighed. The bright side of this is the deference you receive. People are generally kinder to you, more willing to do you favors. There is a certain soft power that comes with being aesthetically pleasing, but the dark side is the constant, suffocating scrutiny. The other girls watch you with a mixture of admiration and intense jealousy. Their mothers see you as a threat, a rival to their own daughters in the ruthless marriage market. You learn to navigate this complex social landscape with caution. You keep your voice soft. You keep your opinions to yourself unless asked. You perfected demure, downcast gaze that acknowledges admiration without seeming to invite it. It is a difficult, exhausting performance. You are no longer a person. You are a prize to be won, a treasure to be claimed. This beauty, which is supposed to be a sign of inner goodness, seems to inspire a distinct lack of it in others. Your mother is more vigilant than ever. She has taught you about the Madi, the evil eye. It is a common superstition, a belief that a look of excessive admiration or envy can bring bad luck, illness, or even death. And you, with your impossible beauty, are a magnet for it. One afternoon, a visiting dignitary sees you and exclaims, a little too loudly, that you are beauty itself. You see your mother flinch. As soon as the man has passed, she subtly spits 3 times on the ground in front of her, a common ritual to ward off the curse his praise may have inadvertently cast. She sees your beauty not just as a gift, but as a vulnerability, a crack through which misfortune can enter. This is the strange, contradictory dance you must perform. You are celebrated for a quality that simultaneously puts you in peril. Praised for a trait you are expected to hide. It is a psychological tightrope walk. You start to wonder if you are the only one who feels this way. Historians still debate the social function of these beliefs. Were stories about the dangers of beauty genuine warnings passed down through generations, born from real-life tragedies, or were they a form of social control? Cautionary tales designed to encourage modesty and keep women, especially beautiful ones, in their designated place, secluded, quiet, and out of the public eye where they might cause trouble. You do not have an answer. All you know is the feeling of being a masterpiece that everyone wants to look at, that no one wants to touch for fear of breaking it, or for fear of being struck down by its jealous creator. The gift has become a burden, the blessing, a target painted on your back, and you have a sinking feeling that the archers are already drawing their bows. The feeling of being watched intensifies. It is no longer just the sideways glances in the agra or the lingering stares of men. This is different. It is a feeling that prickles at the back of your neck when you are alone. A sudden chill on a warm day. You start to feel as though the sky itself has eyes. The Greeks call this feeling the oskopeio, being watched by a god. It is a sensation that can mean favor, but more often than not, it means you have ended up on some divine being's radar for all the wrong reasons. You have grown up with them, of course, the Olympians. Their presence is as real and tangible as the stone temple on the Acropolis. You leave them offerings of milk and honey. You say a prayer to Hestia, goddess of the hearth. Every morning, you know the stories. You know Zeus, the king of the gods, a serial full enderer whose divine affections for mortal women usually result in tragedy for the woman involved. You know of his wife, Hera, queen of the gods, whose jealousy is as vast and as destructive as a tidal wave. Then you know of Aphrodite, the very embodiment of beauty and love, who is, paradoxically, the most insecure of them all when it comes to her signature domain. These are not just characters in a story for you. They are living, breathing, and terrifyingly powerful forces that meddle in human affairs for sport, for vengeance, or simply out of boredom. Their virtues are immense, but their flaws are monumental. They are vain, petty, and notoriously thin-skinned. And you, with your perfect face and golden hair, are beginning to feel like a beautiful, fragile boat sailing into waters controlled by capricious and easily angered gods. One afternoon, you are helping your mother weave at the loom. The rhythmic clacking of the shuttle a comforting sound. An older cousin is visiting, a woman who has traveled more than most. She looks at you, her head tilted, and says to be careful. Little one, she explains that when the gods bless a mortal too much, they sometimes want their gift back. With interest, she says it with a sad smile, but her words hang in the air long after she leaves. You start to see omens everywhere. A black crow ends on your windowsill and stares at you with its intelligent, bead-like eyes. Is it just a bird, or is it a messenger from Apollo? You dream of a great eagle circling high above your house, the symbol of Zeus. You wake up with your heart pounding. Are these just your fears manifesting in your subconscious, or are they actual divine warnings? In your world, the line between superstition and reality is hopelessly blurred. You also become acutely aware of the stories. Before, they were just grand, dramatic tales. Now, they feel like case studies, like cautionary tales written specifically for you. You think of Cassandra, the princess of Troy, who was so beautiful that the god Apollo fell for her. He offered her the gift of prophecy in exchange for her affection. She accepted the gift, but then rejected the god. Enraged, Apollo could not take back his gift, so he cursed it. He made it so that her prophecies would always be true, but no one would ever believe them. She was doomed to see the future, to watch her city burn and her family die, and to be utterly powerless to stop it. screaming warnings that everyone dismissed as madness. Her beauty attracted a god, and that attraction led directly to her ruin. Then there is the story of Semele, another mortal woman who caught the eye of Zeus. She became his lover, and Hera, in a disguise, preyed on her insecurities. The disguised goddess convinced Semele that if Zeus truly loved her, he would appear to her not in his mortal disguise, but in his true, divine form. Semele, tragically, made Zeus swear an unbreakable oath to grant her one wish. He swore on the river Styx, and she made her request. Bound by his oath, Zeus had to reveal himself, the raw, unfiltered power of a god. The pure energy of lightning and thunder was too much for any mortal body to withstand. Semele was instantly incinerated, turned to ash by the very sight of her lover. Her beauty led her to a god's bed, and that path ended in fire. These stories are on a loop in your mind. They all start the same way, with a woman of extraordinary beauty, and they all end in disaster. It is a terrifyingly consistent pattern. Historians and theologians have long debated the purpose of these myths. Were they simply explanations for natural phenomena, as some early scholars believed, or, as many now argue, were they complex social and psychological explorations? These tales of divine jealousy seem to function as a powerful cultural warning against hubris. They teach a vital lesson in the Greek worldview. Know your place. Mortals should be mortals. Gods should be gods. Any attempt to blur that line, intentionally or not, invites divine retribution or nemesis. Your beauty is blurring that line. You did not ask for it. You did not work for it, but you have it. And the divine gaze you feel is not one of a proud parent. It is the gaze of a landlord who thinks you are getting a little too comfortable in a house that you only rent. The general, chilling feeling of being watched soon begins to focus. It is as if a great, celestial spotlight is slowly swiveling, and you are about to be caught in its beam. The vague thread of the gods starts to crystallize around the goddesses. It is the female deities you learn to fear the most, because their domain is your own. Beauty, marriage, and feminine power. And in these arenas, they tolerate no rivals. You start to hear the whispers, the little comparisons that are meant to be compliments but land like curses. A well-meaning but foolish merchant, trying to sell your father a new amphora, gestures to you and says that a vessel as perfect as this is the only thing fit for a household graced by a maiden with the wisdom of Athena and the bearing of Hera herself. Your father beams with pride. You feel a cold dread wash over you. He just invoked two of the most powerful and notoriously proud goddesses in the pantheon. You can almost feel the air grow heavy, as if your name has just been spoken aloud on Mount Olympus, followed by a disdainful question of who you think you are. This is a common and fatal trope in the stories you know. The myth of Arachne, the brilliant weaver, echoes in your mind. She was not punished for being beautiful, but for her talent. Arachne was a mortal whose skill at the loom was so profound, so exquisite, that people said she must have been taught by Athena, the goddess of crafts and wisdom, herself. Arachne, full of pride, denied this. She claimed her skill was all her own, and that she was even better than the goddess. This was an open challenge. Athena appeared, disguised as an old woman, and warned her to be humble, to content herself with being the best among mortals. Arachne scoffed. The contest was on. Athena wove a tapestry depicting the majesty of the gods and the terrible fates of mortals who dared to challenge them. It was a masterpiece. That it was also a warning. Arachne, in a stunning act of defiance, wove a tapestry that showed the gods in a terrible light, detailing their many infidelities and abuses of power. The final insult. Arachne's work was flawless. Technically, it was even better than the work of Athena. The goddess, enraged not just by the hubris, but by the undeniable skill and the disrespectful subject matter, lost her temper. She ripped Arachne's tapestry to shreds and struck the girl on the head. In despair and humiliation, Arachne hanged herself. Athena, in a final act of cruel pity, transformed her into a spider, doomed to weave forever. The lesson was clear. It does not matter if you are right. It does not matter if you are better. If you challenge a god, You lose. You are not a weaver. You do not have a specific skill you are boasting about. Your very existence is the challenge. You are the flawless tapestry, woven by nature, that people are starting to compare to the divine original. Then, there is the story of the daughters of Neo. Neo was a queen of Thebes, and she had 14 children, 7 sons and 7 daughters. She was proud, and one day, she boasted that she was more blessed than the goddess Leto, who had only 2 children, Apollo and Artemis. It was a foolish, fatal comparison. Leto, insulted, sent her to divine children to exact revenge. Apollo, the archer god, killed all 7 of Neo's sons with his merciless arrows. As Neo cradled their bodies, weeping, she arrogantly cried out that she was still superior, as she still had 7 daughters. So Artemis, the archer goddess, killed all 7 daughters. Neo, broken by grief, fled to Mount Ciboelas, where she turned to stone, forever weeping. Her crime was pride, specifically pride in her fertility, which she dared to compare to a fertility of a goddess. You do not have 14 children. You have one face. But the principle is the same. Your singular, perfect beauty is being held up against the beauty of Aphrodite. And unlike Neo, you are not even the one doing the boasting. It is the people around you, your admirers, your family, the foolish poets. They are loading the metaphorical arrows, and you are the one standing in the open field. A fascinating question that historians and mythologists ponder is whether these myths reflect a specific societal anxiety about female competition. In a world where the value of a woman was so heavily tied to her beauty and her ability to secure a powerful husband, was there a deep-seated cultural fear of upstaging one another? These myths, projecting this rivalry onto a cosmic scale, could be seen as a way of articulating and navigating the very real social pressures and jealousies that govern the lives of women. The goddess, in this reading, becomes the ultimate alpha female, punishing any who dare to climb too high up the social ladder. You feel this acutely. The other girls in the village, some are kind, but you can feel the distance. It is not your fault, and it is not entirely theirs. You are a walking, talking reminder of an ideal they can never reach. You are the reason their fathers might sigh and wish they were a little prettier. The reason a potential suitor's eyes might glaze over when he looks at them, because he is thinking of you. You are, through no fault of your own, the source of their insecurity. And if mortal girls can feel this way, what must a goddess be feeling? A goddess whose very identity is tied to being the fairest of all. You are about to get a much clearer and much more personal answer to that question than you could ever want. The abstract fear of divine jealousy is about to get a name and a face, and that name is Psyche. You first hear her story not as a grand myth, but as a piece of gossip, a tale from a nearby kingdom that travels from port to port, carried by sailors and merchants. It is a story that feels uncomfortably familiar. The story goes like this. In a certain city, there lived a king and queen who had 3 daughters. The 2 elder daughters were perfectly lovely, beautiful enough to be praised and admired. But the youngest daughter, her name was Psyche, and her beauty was of a different order entirely. It was not just human beauty. It was divine. People who saw her were so awestruck that they began to neglect the worship of the actual goddess of beauty. Aphrodite. You can picture it perfectly. The shrines to Aphrodite, once laden with flowers and offerings, start to gather dust. The festivals in her honor are sparsely attended. Why travel to a cold temple to worship a marble statue of a distant goddess when you can walk to the palace and see a living, breathing incarnation of beauty in the flesh? Travelers and citizens alike would flock to get a glimpse of Psyche. They began to offer her the same reverence, the same prayers, the same sacrifices that were due to the goddess. They started calling her the new Aphrodite. When you hear this part of the story, a chill runs down your spine. This is your greatest fear realized. It is the sin of hubris, but committed by proxy. Psyche herself, by all accounts, was modest and unassuming. She did not ask for this worship. She was, in fact, distressed by it. She was just there, beautiful, a blank screen onto which people projected their own ideas of divinity. The story continues, and it gets darker. While her two ordinary sisters married handsome princes and went off to lead happy lives, no one dared to ask for the hand of Psyche. Kings and commoners alike would come to admire her, to worship her as a work of art, but no one treated her like a woman. They revered her too much to touch her. Her beauty had elevated her beyond the realm of human connection. She was isolated on a pedestal of her own perfection, adored by all but loved by none. Her father, the king, grew desperate. His daughter was of marriageable age, yet she was becoming a kind of permanent, unwed priestess in a cult dedicated to herself. Worried that he had somehow angered the gods, he traveled to the oracle of Apollo at Miletus to ask for guidance. He prayed for a husband for his beautiful, lonely daughter. The response of the oracle was not what he had hoped for. It was terrifying. The priestess, in a trance, delivered a prophecy that sealed the fate of Psyche. She declared that the king should set out the maiden on a mountain peak, adorned for a funeral marriage. She told him not to hope for a mortal son-in-law, but for a fierce and savage viper-like creature who flies through the air, vexing all with fire and sword. Imagine the horror of the king. He was being instructed to dress his beloved daughter in wedding clothes, lead her to a desolate mountain peak, and leave her there to be claimed by a monstrous, winged serpent who was a terror to the gods themselves. It was a death sentence disguised as a marriage proposal. This story circulates, and you and everyone who hears it understands the subtext. This was not the will of Apollo. This was the work of a jealous goddess pulling the strings behind the scenes. Aphrodite, sitting on her throne on Olympus, had heard the prayers meant for her being diverted to a mortal goal. She had seen her temples neglected, and her anger had curdled into a cold, calculated plan for revenge. She had arranged this marriage for Psyche. The monster her rival was destined to marry was no random beast. It was a punishment, custom designed to humiliate and destroy the girl whose face had dared to rival her own. It is a point of academic fascination just how much the story of Psyche, which is most famously recorded by the Roman writer Apuleius, draws from older, lost Greek folk tales. Is it a later Roman invention with Greek flavor, or is it a genuine preservation of a much older myth? Many scholars believe its core themes, the jealous goddess, the impossible tasks, the mysterious supernatural husband, are hallmarks of ancient oral traditions, suggesting that a version of a cautionary tale of Psyche was likely told around Greek hearths for centuries. For you, the academic questions do not matter. What matters is the terrifying relatability of the predicament of Psyche. She did nothing wrong. She was simply born too beautiful. Her community, in their adoration, committed a form of blasphemy on her behalf. Dindo, she was being sent to a mountaintop to be devoured. As you sit in your own quiet home, feeling the weight of the gazes of people, you cannot help but feel a profound connection to this distant, doomed princess. You are both living proof of a terrible truth. In the eyes of a jealous god, your beauty is not a defense. It is the entire case for the prosecution. The story of Psyche continues, and with every detail, you feel as if you are receiving a personalized warning. The focus of the tale now shifts from the mortal realm to the divine, revealing the engine of this impending tragedy, the fury of Aphrodite. You can almost picture the scene on Mount Olympus, a place of supposed serenity and light, now soured by the festering resentment of the goddess. In the version of the story that reaches you, Aphrodite is not just angry, she is incandescent with rage. Her divinity has been questioned. Her unique selling point, the very essence of her power and identity, has been challenged by a mere mortal. To her, this is an existential threat. So, she summons the one person in the universe who can carry out a revenge as cruel and precise as the one she has in mind, her son, Eros. In your time, Eros is not the chubby, cherubic baby with a toy bow and arrow that later cultures will imagine. He is a formidable and dangerous deity in his own right. He is a handsome, powerful, and often malicious youth whose arrows are tipped with an irresistible, chaotic force. He can make gods and mortals fall madly, destructively in love, often with the most inappropriate and ruinous objects of affection. He is the god of uncontrollable passion, the force that doctors men to madness and tears civilizations apart. He is, in short, the perfect weapon for a bitter goddess. Aphrodite brings her son to her side. You can imagine her pointing down from the clouds, her finger aimed at the kingdom where Psyche lives. She asks him if he sees that girl, that insolent pretender to her idol. She wants him to punish her. She wants him to use his power, that irresistible fire of his, and make her fall desperately in love, but not with a king, or a hero, or even a decent man. Her instructions are chillingly specific. She commands him to find the most wretched, most vile, most contemptible man on the face of the earth. She tells him to find a man broken by poverty, ravaged by disease, a man so low that no other woman would even glance his way. She wants him to pierce her heart with his arrow and bind her soul to him. She wants to see this goddess on her knees, embracing a living ruin. She says that will be a fitting punishment for her beauty. This is the nature of divine revenge. It is not a quick, clean death. It is a slow, agonizing humiliation. Aphrodite does not want to kill Psyche. She wants to desecrate the very thing that made her a rival. She wants to take the celebrated beauty of Psyche and yoke it to the ugliest fate imaginable, creating a spectacle of suffering for all the world to see. It is a punishment that is, in its own way, a work of art, a masterpiece of cruelty. So Eros, the ever-obedient son, agrees. He takes up his golden quiver, filled with the arrows of love, and descends from Olympus. He flies, invisible, to the bedchamber of Psyche. She is asleep, her face serene in the moonlight, looking even more divine in repose. The story says that Eros himself, the god who has toyed with the hearts of countless others, is momentarily stunned by her beauty. He has never seen anything like it. For a split second, he hesitates. In that moment of hesitation, he accidentally pricks his own thumb on the tip of one of his arrows. The wound is tiny, insignificant, but the magic is absolute. Instantly, the god of love falls helplessly, irrevocably in love with the very girl he was sent to destroy. He is now bound by his own power, caught in his own web. He looks at the sleeping Psyche not as a target, but as the object of his own all-consuming passion. He cannot possibly carry out the orders of his mother now. He cannot condemn the woman he loves to a life of misery. So he improvises. He knows he cannot defy his mother openly. Her wrath would be terrible for them both. He needs a plan, a way to have Psyche for himself while keeping her safe from Aphrodite. Looking at her, he makes a decision. He cannot save her from the prophecy of the oracle. That has already been set in motion. She must be sent to the mountain. But he can change who, or what, is waiting for her there. He will not be her punisher. He will be her husband. The monster the oracle spoke of will be him. A point of scholarly contention is the character of Eros himself. In earlier Greek poetry, like the work of Hesiod, Eros is a primordial force, one of the first beings to exist, representing the fundamental cosmic principle of attraction. In later myths, like this one, he is demoted to the son of Aphrodite, a more petulant, soap operatic figure. This evolution of Eros from a cosmic power to a romantic protagonist reflects a shift in Greek culture itself, moving from grand cosmological questions to more personal, human-centered dramas. As you absorb this part of the tale, it adds a layer of tragic irony to the whole affair. Psyche is now the victim of the conflicting desires of two gods. She is being punished by a goddess who hates her, and she is being saved by a god who loves her but can only do so through deception. She is still a pawn, moved across the board by forces she cannot see or understand. Her fate is no longer to be married to a wretch. It is to be married to a god who must hide his identity from her forever. The curse has been altered, but it is a curse nonetheless. And as you imagine the family of Psyche weeping, preparing her for her funeral wedding, you realize her journey into the unknown is just beginning. The day of the wedding of Psyche arrives. You imagine the scene with a heavy heart, as if you are one of the silent townspeople watching the procession. There is no joyous music, no laughter. The entire city is in mourning. Psyche is dressed not in the saffron-colored robes of a happy bride, but in funereal white. Her hair is styled for a wedding, but her face is pale with dread, her eyes filled with a resignation that is far more heartbreaking than tears. Her family and the citizens accompany her in a grim parade, their torches sputtering in the daylight, their hymns sounding like dirges. They climb the winding path up the designated mountain, the air growing thinner and colder. When they reach the barren, windswept peak, they perform the final rites. Her parents embrace her one last time, their sobs echoing in the desolate landscape. Then, as the oracle commanded, they leave her there, alone, standing on a lonely precipice, a sacrifice waiting for her monstrous groom. You stand there with her. In spirit, the wind whips her veil around her face. The sun begins to set, casting long, menacing shadows. She is terrified, weeping now that she is finally alone. She stares into the abyss, waiting for the leathery wings and fiery breath of the monster she was promised. This, she thinks, is the end. But the end does not come. Instead, something gentle happens. Very soft, warm breeze begins to stir around her. It is Epirus, the west wind, sent by her secret lover, Eros. The wind lifts her, as if she were a feather, cradling her in its invisible arms. It carries her off the jagged cliff, not into the chasm below, but downward, gently, into a lush, hidden valley. She lands in a meadow of impossibly soft grass, filled with flowers of every color. The air is warm and fragrant. In the center of the valley stands a magnificent palace. It is a structure not built by human hands. The walls seem to be carved from ivory and gold, the roof styled with silver. It shines in the twilight as if lit from within. It is a place of divine, otherworldly beauty. Hesitantly, Psyche approaches. The gates swing open on their own, inviting her in. The palace is empty, but it is not silent. As she walks through the vast, ornate halls, she hears voices. They are disembodied, whispering on the air. They say, "Welcome, mistress." They say, "All that you see is yours." They say, "We are your servants, and we will obey your every command." These are the invisible servants of Eros, spirits tasked with attending to his new bride. They lead her to a private bath, already drawn and scented with perfumes. They lay out a sumptuous feast for her on a table that fills itself. After she has eaten, a divine melody, played by an unseen lyre and sung by an unheard choir, fills the air to soothe her. Psyche is bewildered, overwhelmed. She was prepared for a lair of a monster, for a gruesome death. Instead, she has stumbled into a paradise. This is not a punishment, it is an enchantment. As night falls, she is led to a lavish bedchamber. She lies down in the darkness, her heart a mix of fear and wonder. Sometime in the deep of the night, he comes to her, her prophesied husband. He moves in the total darkness, and his voice is a gentle whisper. He is kind, loving, and passionate. He is her husband, but he makes one thing absolutely clear. She is forbidden from ever seeing his face. He is a creature of the night, he explains, and he must depart before the first light of dawn. If she ever tries to look upon him, their happiness will be instantly, irrevocably destroyed. And so, her new life begins. It is a strange, paradoxical existence. By day, she is the lonely mistress of an enchanted palace, attended by invisible servants, with every luxury at her fingertips. By night, she is the cherished wife of a mysterious lover she can feel but never see. He is a wonderful husband. He is gentle. He listens to her, and his love for her is palpable. But he is just a voice in the dark, a warm presence beside her. The intimacy is profound, yet it is built on a foundation of complete mystery. She grows to love him. How could she not? He has saved her from a terrible fate and given her a life of ease and affection. But a seed of doubt, planted by the prophecy of the oracle, remains. Who is he? Why the secrecy? Is this kindness a mask? Is the man who whispers such loving words to her in the dark the same fierce and savage creature the prophecy spoke of? Is she living in a dream? Or is she the well-cared-for captive of a monster who is simply biding his time? The theme of the mysterious supernatural husband is a classic folklore motif, appearing in tales across many cultures, often known as the animal bridegroom type. Academics debate its psychological meaning. Does it represent the anxiety of a young woman about arranged marriage, about being bound to a man she does not know? Does the monster symbolize the strangeness and potential fear of marital intimacy, which can only be overcome through trust? The story of Psyche is perhaps the most elegant and psychologically complex version of this ancient narrative archetype. For her, the love is real, but the doubt is a poison, slowly seeping into the foundations of her gilded cage. For a time, Psyche is content. The sheer relief of escaping her grim fate, combined with the luxury of her new home and the affection of her nocturnal husband, is enough. But contentment is a fragile state, and loneliness is a powerful solvent. The enchanted palace, for all its splendor, is a solitary confinement. The invisible servants can cater to her needs, but they cannot offer companionship. She has no one to talk to, no one to share her strange new life with. The days are long and silent. She begins to miss her family. She worries about them, imagining their grief. They believe her to be dead, devoured by a monster. She pleads with her husband during one of his nightly visits. She begs him to please let me see my sisters. Let them know that I am alive and well. The solitude is eating at my heart. Her husband, the voice in the darkness. You can hear the sadness and reluctance in his response. He warns her, his words full of a desperate urgency. He says, "My love, you do not know what you are asking. Your sisters will not bring you comfort. They will bring you ruin. They will fill your mind with poison and convince you to break our one rule. If you listen to them, you will destroy our happiness and bring a great sorrow upon yourself." But Psyche weeps and pleads. She promises she will be strong, that she will not listen to any bad advice. She just needs to see them, to put their minds at ease. Finally, worn down by hurt ears and unable to deny her anything, he reluctantly agrees. It is the first fatal crack in their perfect, fragile world. He instructs Zebulus, the west wind, to fetch her two sisters from the mountain peak where they have gone to mourn her. And so, the two older princesses are swept up into the air and deposited in the magical valley. Their initial shock at seeing Psyche alive quickly turns to astonishment as they are given a tour of the incredible palace. They see the golden walls, the gem-encrusted furniture, the self-replenishing feasts, and their astonishment quickly coalesces into a raw, burning jealousy. This was supposed to be the cursed sister, the one sacrificed to a monster, and here she is, living in a palace fit for the gods, with untold riches at her command. They, who had married mortal kings, lived in mundane, human luxury. Their little sister had somehow failed upwards into a life of divine splendor. It is more than they can bear. They pepper her with questions. Who is your husband? He must be incredibly powerful and wealthy. Is he a great prince? A king? Remembering the warnings of her husband, at first tries to lie. She says he is a handsome young man, a wealthy landowner who spends his days hunting in the mountains. But in her nervousness, her story is flimsy and unconvincing. The sisters see right through it. They press her, their questions becoming sharper, more insistent. Why does not he show himself? What is he hiding? Their words are like little probes, searching for a weakness. They prey on the very seed of doubt that already exists in the mind of Psyche. One sister whispers with false concern that perhaps the prophecy was true. Perhaps he is a monster, a hideous serpent who transforms into the shape of a man at night. That is why he will not let you see him. He is fattening you up, and when you are plump enough, he will devour you and your unborn child. The mention of a child hits Psyche hard. She is, by this time, pregnant. The poison of the sisters works its way directly into her deepest fears. The image they paint is horrific. Her loving husband, a monstrous snake in disguise. Her paradise, a gilded cage where she is being prepared for slaughter. Her love, to lie, after the sisters leave, promising to return. Their words fester in the mind of Psyche. The logical, trusting part of her brain battles with the primal fear they have stoked. The doubt becomes an obsession. The nights are no longer a comfort. They are a source of terror. Who is this man sleeping beside her? Is it the loving husband she has grown to adore? Or is it the beast in human form? She has to know. The uncertainty is more painful than any truth could be. The warning of her husband echoes in her head, but the whispers of her sisters are louder. They had given her a plan, a terrible, simple plan. She prepares a sharp knife to kill the monster if he is one, and she hides an oil lamp to finally see his face. That night, after he has fallen into a deep sleep, she puts the plan into action. Her hand trembles as she lights the lamp. She raises it, the flickering light pushing back the sacred darkness that has defined her marriage. She holds the lamp over the bed, her heart pounding in her chest, ready to see the hideous form of a serpent. But what she sees is not a monster. It is the most beautiful being she has ever laid eyes on. She sees the golden curls, the powerful, perfect shoulders, the soft feathers of the wings resting on his back. In her bed lies not a beast, but the god Eros himself. She is so stunned, so overwhelmed with relief and awe, that her hand trembles. A single drop of hot oil falls from the lamp and lands on the shoulder of the god. He awakens instantly, not with a cry of anger, but of pain and betrayal. He looks at her, his eyes filled with a sorrow deeper than any she has ever seen. He whispers, "Thou, foolish Psyche, is this how you repay my love?" Without another word, he ends the entire enchanted palace vanish. Psyche finds herself alone again, but this time she is on a barren riverbank. In the real world, the paradise is gone, her husband is gone, and she is left with nothing but the crushing weight of her own terrible, curiosity-fueled mistake. The conflict between faith and doubt, love and reason, is central to this story. Scholars have often interpreted this moment as a crucial step in the psychological development of Psyche. She moves from a state of passive, childlike acceptance to a desire for knowledge and agency. However, in the context of the myth, this quest for knowledge is framed as a transgression. She has broken the one sacred rule, and in doing so, has shattered her own happiness. It is a powerful and tragic commentary on the idea that some forms of bliss can only exist in a state of ignorance. The world that Psyche awakens to is silent and gray. The magical valley, the golden palace, the invisible servants, all gone, dissolved like a dream at dawn. The only thing that remains is the cold, hard reality of her loss. She has seen the face of a god, and the price for that knowledge was everything she held dear. She is alone, abandoned, and pregnant with a divine child. But in the depths of her despair, a new feeling begins to take root. Determination. She has lost her love through foolishness. She will win him back through sheer will. Her first instinct is to wander, searching aimlessly for any sign of him or his vanished kingdom. The world outside the magical bubble is harsh and unforgiving. She is just a girl, alone and with no resources. After days of fruitless searching, she realizes that aimless wandering is pointless. If she wants to find her divine husband, she needs to confront the source of all her troubles. She needs to face his mother. She needs to go, willingly, into the den of the lion. Psyche resolves to find a temple of Aphrodite and throw herself at the mercy of the goddess. It is a terrifying prospect. She knows of the hatred the goddess has for her, but it is her only path. She believes that if she can show true remorse, if she can humble herself completely, perhaps she can appease the goddess and learn where Eros has gone. She finally finds a grand temple dedicated to the goddess of love. As she approaches, she sees that the temple courtyard is in a state of disarray. Offerings of grain, wheat, barley, millet are mixed with poppy seeds and lentils, all piled together in messy heaps. Tools of the harvest, like sickles and rakes, are strewn about carelessly. It looks neglected, chaotic. Psyche, in an attempt to show her piety and perhaps earn a scrap of goodwill, immediately sets to work. She carefully sorts the different types of grain into their own neat piles and organizes the scattered tools. It is a small, humble act of devotion. Just as she finishes, Aphrodite herself appears, but there is no mercy in her eyes. She sees Psyche not as a penitent, but as a rival who has defied her, stolen her son, and now has the audacity to show her face, the goddess lets out a cruel, mocking laugh. Aphrodite speaks with a voice dripping with sarcasm. She says so. The little runaway servant has finally decided to turn herself in. Or perhaps you have come to check on your sick husband, the one who is still nursing the wound your loving hand gave him. Psyche falls to her knees and begs for forgiveness, for any crumb of compassion. Aphrodite simply smiles a cold, sharp smile. She asks for compassion. She says, you want to earn back my son. Very well. Love, as you should know, is not won easily. It requires work. Labor. I will test you. I will give you a series of tasks. If you can complete them, then, and only then, will I consider you worthy. But I warn you, they will not be easy. And so begins the cruel game of Aphrodite. She sees this not as a path to redemption for Psyche, but as a series of opportunities to destroy her once and for all, under the guise of giving her a fair chance. The first task is a magnification of what Psyche has just done. Aphrodite takes the meticulously sorted piles of grain, mixes them all together again in one enormous mound, and adds other seeds to the mix. She points to the mountain of grain and says, before this evening, you will sort this entire pile, each seed back into its own kind. She leaves Psyche alone with the impossible task. Psyche stares at the heap. It would take 100 women a week to sort this pile. For one person to do it in a single afternoon is beyond impossible. She does not even try. She just sits down and weeps, overwhelmed by the sheer hopelessness of it all. But then, a small miracle occurs. An ant, a tiny field ant, sees her plight, taking pity on the weeping girl. The ant scurries back to its nest and summons its entire colony. A great army of ants swarms the pile of grain. With relentless, organized efficiency, they work for hours, each ant carrying a single seed and depositing it on the correct, newly formed pile. By the time Aphrodite returns at sunset, expecting to find Psyche in a state of failure and despair, she finds the task completed. Every seed is perfectly sorted. The goddess is furious. She snarls that this is not your work. I know he is helping you, but do not think you have one. This was just the beginning. This part of the myth, the impossible task sequence, is a cornerstone of folklore and fairy tales. Academics see strong parallels with other hero journeys, like the labors of Heracles. It represents a period of trial and purification. Each task is designed to be impossible for a mortal alone, requiring supernatural aid. This reinforces the idea that the hero or heroine, in this case Psyche, is deserving of divine favor. Her humility and inherent goodness attract the sympathy of nature itself. The ants, the reeds, the eagle, which intervenes on her behalf. Her success is not a measure of her own strength, but of her worthiness to receive help. It is a subtle but important distinction in the Greek worldview. Psyche is not a warrior. Her power lies in her ability to inspire compassion, a trait that the cruel goddess before her so sorely lacks. The fury of Aphrodite only intensifies. The fact that Psyche succeeded in the first task, clearly with some unseen help, convinces the goddess that she needs to make the next trials not just impossible, but actively lethal. She is no longer just testing Psyche. She is trying to kill her for the second task. She leads Psyche to the bank of a rushing river. On the other side, a grove of trees shimmers in the sunlight. Grazing in this grove is a flock of sheep unlike any other. They are huge, fierce, and their fleece is made of pure, shining gold. Aphrodite commands with a malicious glint in her eye for Psyche to go, cross the river and bring her back the hink of that golden wool. This is a death sentence. Psyche can see that these are not ordinary sheep. They are wild and aggressive, known to gore any creature that approaches them, and the river itself is a torrent, deep and fast-moving. To attempt to cross it and confront the flock would be suicide. Once again, Psyche despairs. She walks to the riverbank, not with the intention of crossing, but of throwing herself in to end her suffering. But just as she is about to give up, a voice speaks to her. It seems to come from the green reeds rustling by the water's edge. The reeds whisper, "Though, foolish girl, do not pollute these sacred waters with your death, and do not approach those terrible sheep while the sun is high. They are filled with a mad rage. Wait until the afternoon sun has lulled them to sleep in the shade. Then you can creep into the thickets and briar patches where they have rested. You will find their golden fleece snagged on the thorns. You can gather all the wool you need without any danger, following the advice of the reeds. Psyche waits. As the day cools, she carefully picks her way through the thorny bushes on the other side of the river. Gathering the beautiful, shimmering tufts of golden wool, she returns to Aphrodite with a whole armful of the precious fleece. The goddess is again thwarted, her face tight with anger. She knows this was not the own cunning of Psyche at work. For the third task, the cruelty of Aphrodite reaches new heights. She hands Psyche a crystal goblet. She says to take this and go to the very source of the river Styx, the river of the underworld. Fill this goblet with its black water and bring it back to me. This is the most impossible task yet. The source of the Styx is said to be at the top of a colossal, unclimbable mountain, its sides made of sheer, slippery rock, and the waterfall itself is guarded by terrifying dragons, their eyes ever watchful. No mortal could ever hope to make the ascent, let alone get past the monstrous guardians. Psyche takes the goblet and begins her journey. When she reaches the foot of the mountain and sees the impossible cliffs and the dragons circling high above, she freezes in pure terror. This time, no voice comes to help her. This, she feels, is truly the end. But as she stands there, paralyzed by fear, a great eagle, a sacred bird of Zeus, king of the gods, swoops down from the sky. Perhaps Zeus himself, from his throne on Olympus, has taken pity on the beleaguered girl, or perhaps he is nudging things along to help his nephew Eros. The eagle gently takes the crystal goblet from her hand with its beak. It soars up the unclimbable cliffs, expertly dodging the dragons, fills the goblet from the black, chilling waterfall, and brings it safely back down to Psyche. When Psyche presents the water of the Styx to Aphrodite, the goddess is beside herself with rage. But she has one final task, one she is certain will be the doom of Psyche. It is a journey from which no mortal has ever returned. Aphrodite sneers that you have proven yourself resourceful, or at least you have powerful friends. But now for the final test. You must go down into the underworld itself. Go to Persephone, the queen of the dead, and tell her I sent you. My beauty, I will say, has faded from caring for my wounded son. Ask her to put a little of her own divine beauty into this box. She hands Psyche a small, empty golden box, and do not, under any circumstances, open it. A journey to the land of the dead. This is no longer a game. This is a direct order to die. Yet Psyche, now hardened by her trials, accepts her fate and sets off to find an entrance to Hades. Her beauty, ironically, is what saves her one last time, as she is about to throw herself from a high tower to grant herself quick passage to the underworld. The tower itself speaks to her, giving her precise instructions on how to enter Hades alive, how to placate Charon the ferryman with a coin, how to distract the three-headed dog Kerberos with a honey cake, and most importantly, how to conduct herself in the court of Persephone. She succeeds. She navigates the terrifying landscape of the dead, refuses all food and comfort so she is not trapped there forever, and presents her request to the solemn queen of the underworld. Persephone, perhaps moved by the courage of the mortal girl or simply weary of the vanity of Aphrodite, agrees. She gives Psyche the box, filled with a mysterious substance. Psyche makes it back to the world of the living, the golden box in her hands. She has done it. She has completed all the tasks. But as she walks, a final, fatal temptation takes hold of her. Curiosity, the same quality that cost her her paradise. She thinks that she is about to see her beloved Eros again. She should probably use a little of this divine beauty for herself, to make herself more pleasing to him. Forgetting the final warning, she opens the box. But the box does not contain beauty. It contains a Stygian sleep, a deep, death-like coma from the very depths of the underworld. As soon as she lifts the lid, she is overwhelmed and collapses on the road, lifeless. This, finally, is why Eros re-enters the story. His wound now healed. He has been trapped by his mother, but he can bear the separation no longer. He escapes and finds the motionless body of Psyche on the road. In a panic, he gently wipes the sleep from her face and puts it back in the box. He awakens her with a gentle prick from one of his arrows. He says, half exasperated, half adoring, that again you have almost perished from your own curiosity. He then flies to Olympus and directly confronts Zeus, pleading his case. Zeus, amused by the whole affair and perhaps wanting to end the drama, agrees to formalize their union. He makes Psyche immortal by giving her a cup of ambrosia, the food of the gods. Aphrodite is forced to accept her new daughter-in-law, her anger finally placated by the fact that Psyche, by becoming a goddess, will now stay on Olympus and no longer be a rival for the attention of men on earth. The ultimate resolution of the story of Psyche has been debated for its meaning. Is it a triumph of love, where the devotion of a mortal elevates her to divine status? Or is it a tale of assimilation, where the only way for a dangerously beautiful mortal to be safe is to be removed from the mortal world entirely unmade a goddess, thus neutralizing the threat she posed? In a way, her beauty was the source of her suffering, but it was also the catalyst for her incredible journey and ultimate salvation. It attracted the love of a god, which gave her the allies and the motivation she needed to survive the hatred of his mother. Her beauty was both the poison and the antidote. Now, let us leave the realm of myth for a moment, or rather, let us step into a myth so powerful, it feels like history. The story of Psyche was a cautionary tale about divine jealousy, a cosmic drama played out on a personal scale. But now, your attention is drawn to a different kind of danger, one where the beauty of a woman does not just anger a single goddess, but ignites a fire that consumes an entire civilization. We are turning our gaze to Sparta, and to a name you already know, a name that has become synonymous with fatal beauty. Helen. Before she was Helen of Troy, she was Helen of Sparta, a princess whose parentage was as spectacular as her face. The story of her birth is, in classic Greek fashion, dramatic and strange. Her mother was Leda, the beautiful queen of Sparta. One day, Zeus, the king of the gods, saw her and was overcome with desire. To approach her, he transformed himself into a magnificent swan. From this bizarre union, Leda produced 2 eggs. From one egg hatched the mortal twins Castor and Kiltendemist, fathered by her human husband, King Tyndareus. From the other egg hatched the semi-divine twins, Polydeuces and Helen, fathered by Zeus. So from the very beginning, Helen is set apart. She is, quite literally, the daughter of a god. Her beauty is not just exceptional, it is supernatural. It is a direct inheritance from the most powerful deity on Olympus, where the beauty of Psyche was a fluke of nature that rivaled the gods. The beauty of Helen is a deliberate, divine creation, and this makes her infinitely more potent and infinitely more dangerous. You can imagine her as a child in the austere, militaristic state of Sparta. Sparta was not a place that cultivated softness or vanity. It was a society of warriors, of discipline, of physical prowess. Girls, like boys, were expected to be strong and athletic. They exercised, they ran, they wrestled. Yet, even in this harsh environment, the beauty of Helen was undeniable. It was a flower blooming in a field of stones. Her reputation spread like wildfire across the Greek world. Long before she was of marriageable age, tales of the Spartan princess with the face of a goddess reached every corner of the Aegean. She became less a person and more of a legend, a prize of unimaginable value. And this is where the trouble begins. Her beauty made her a target from a very young age. This was not just about attracting suitors, it was about attracting predators. The first major trauma of her life happens when she is just a girl, perhaps only 12 years old. The great hero Theseus, the same hero who famously slew the Minotaur in Crete, hears of her otherworldly beauty. He and his best friend, Pirithous, make a pact to each marry a daughter of Zeus. Theseus chooses Helen. He does not court her. He does not ask for her hand. He travels to Sparta and kidnaps her. Let that sink in. A celebrated hero, a king, commits a violent act of abduction against a child, and the story is often told as a testament to her beauty, not as a crime against her person. This is the world you live in, a world where the beauty of a woman can be seen as an open invitation for violence, where she is treated as an object to be acquired rather than a person to be respected. The abduction of Helen by Theseus is a shocking event, but it is treated in the myths almost as a rite of passage, a testament to her irresistible allure. She is eventually rescued by her powerful brothers, the twins, Castor and Polydeuces, who invade Attica and bring her home while Theseus is away in the underworld. But the incident leaves a permanent mark. It is the first clear sign that her beauty makes her not a person to be courted, but a treasure to be seized. It establishes a terrifying precedent for her life. As Helen reaches marriageable age, her stepfather, King Tyndareus, finds himself in an impossible position. The reputation of her beauty has grown to mythic proportions. From all over Greece, the greatest kings, princes, and heroes flock to Sparta, each determined to win her hand. This is not a local competition. It is a who is who of the ancient Greek world. You have Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, the hulking Ajax, Diomedes, the great warrior, and the wealthy and powerful brothers, Agamemnon and Menelaus, princes of Mycenae. Tyndareus looks at the gathering of ambitious, proud, and heavily armed men camped outside his palace, and he feels a cold sweat. He knows that no matter who he chooses as the husband of Helen, he will make enemies of all the others. The rejected suitors, their pride wounded, are almost certain to form a coalition and attack whoever is chosen. The very act of choosing a husband for Helen could plunge all of Greece into a bloody civil war. Her beauty is so potent that it threatens to tear the fabric of society apart before she is even married. He stalls. He refuses to accept any of their lavish gifts, refuses to make a decision, hoping the problem will somehow solve itself. But the suitors are not leaving. The tension mounts with each passing day. It is here that one of the suitors, the clever Odysseus, sees an opportunity. He is a realist. He knows he probably does not have the wealth or status to win the hand of Helen against competitors like the princes of Mycenae. So he goes to Tyndareus with a proposition. He says he can solve your problem. He says he can tell you how to choose a husband for Helen without sparking a war. In return, you must help me win the hand of your niece, the more sensible and less catastrophically beautiful Penelope. Tyndareus, desperate, eagerly agrees, and Odysseus lays out his ingenious plan. It is a plan that is both brilliant and, in hindsight, catastrophic. Odysseus advises that before you announce your decision, you must make every single one of these suitors wear a solemn oath. They must all vow, together, to accept and defend the man you choose as the husband of Helen. And more than that, they must swear that if anyone ever tries to abduct Helen or harm her husband, they will all unite and wage war against the perpetrator, whoever it may be. It is a stroke of political genius. It transforms the suitors from rivals into a collective security force. By swearing the oath, each man is bound by his honor to protect the eventual winner, protecting himself from the wrath of the others. It completely diffuses the immediate crisis. Tyndareus sees the brilliance of the plan and immediately puts it into action. He gathers all the suitors. They are proud, competitive men, but they are also bound by the laws of honor and the fear of the gods. He makes them sacrifice a horse, a deeply sacred act, and stand upon its dismembered parts as they swear the unbreakable oath. Each man, with his hand on the bloody sacrifice, vows to protect the future husband of Helen and to join in vengeance against anyone who might wrong him. They are thinking, of course, about protecting him from one of the other men in that very room. They have no idea they are signing up for a war against a foreign power a decade from now. With the oath sworn and the danger neutralized, Tyndareus is finally free to choose. He selects Menelaus, the younger of the two Mycenaean princes. It is a solid political choice. Menelaus is wealthy, powerful, and his brother, Agamemnon, is the most powerful king in Greece. Menelaus becomes the king of Sparta, and Helen becomes his queen. For a while, it seems to work. The rejected suitors honor their oath and return to their own kingdoms. Helen and Menelaus have a daughter, Hermione. Life in the Spartan court is peaceful. The great crisis seems to have been averted, but the oath of Tyndareus, as it comes to be known, does not solve the problem of the beauty of Helen. It merely codifies it. It institutionalizes her status as a possession of immense value. The oath is not really about protecting Helen as a person. It is about protecting the claim of Menelaus to her. It turns her into a national treasure, and the oath is the security system. But like any security system, it is only as good as the threat it is designed to repel. It was designed to stop a fellow Greek from breaking the rules. It was never designed to stop a charming foreign prince, guided by a goddess, who plays by a completely different set of rules. Historians often debate whether the Oath of Tyndareus has any basis in historical reality. Was there a real political alliance or treaty among the Mycenaean Greek kingdoms that was later personified and dramatized in the myth of the suitors of Helen? Some scholars suggest the story could be a poetic memory of mutual defense pacts common in the Bronze Age. In this view, Helen is not just a beautiful woman. She is a metaphor for a valuable prize, perhaps a trade route, a territory, or a political alliance that the Greek kingdoms all agreed to protect. For you, living in this world, she is very, very real. And that oath, sworn over a dead horse, is not a political treaty. It is a tripwire, waiting for someone to stumble over it. The tripwire is about to be pulled, not by the ambition of a suitor, but by the vanity of the gods. The story shifts once again to the divine realm, to an event that happens far from the quiet court of Sparta, but which will determine the fate of Helen. It all begins, as great disasters often do, at a wedding. The wedding is for Pelleas, a mortal king, and Thetis, a beautiful sea nymph. It is a huge affair, and all the gods and goddesses are invited to celebrate the union. Oh, that is, except one. Ares, the goddess of discord, is deliberately left off the guest list. You do not invite strife to a wedding, after all. But Ares is not one to be slighted. Offended and determined to stir up the trouble she is so famous for, she crashes the party. She does not make a scene. She does not shout or curse. She does something far more subtle and far more destructive. She rolls a single, perfect, solid gold apple into the middle of the feasting hall. On the apple is inscribed a single phrase, Tickle est, for the fairest. Then she vanishes, leaving the golden apple to do its work. And it works beautifully. 3 of the most powerful goddesses on Olympus immediately lay claim to it. Hera, the stately queen of the gods, wife of Zeus. She believes the apple is hers by right of her status and power. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, proud and brilliant, believes her serene and intelligent beauty is superior. And Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, is outraged that anyone else would even dare to compete for a title that is so obviously hers. The argument becomes heated. The 3 goddesses, their divine pride on the line, begin to bicker. The other gods wisely refuse to get involved. None of them is foolish enough to choose one under in the eternal enmity of the other 2. They turn to Zeus to be the judge. Zeus is in an even more impossible position. He is the husband of Hera, the father of Athena, and the relationship with Aphrodite is complicated. Any choice he makes will have disastrous consequences within his own family. So, with the kind of divine buck passing he is famous for, he declares that this is a matter too delicate for a god to decide. It must be judged by a mortal. He chooses the judge carefully. He needs someone with a good eye for beauty, but more importantly, someone naive and isolated enough to not understand the political ramifications of his decision. He chooses a young shepherd tending his flocks on the remote slopes of Mount Ida, near the city of Troy. The name of the shepherd is Paris. Unbeknownst to almost everyone, Paris is no simple shepherd. He is a prince of Troy, son of King Priam, who was abandoned at birth because of a prophecy that he would one day cause the destruction of his city. So the messenger god, Hermes, descends to Mount Ida. He leads the 3 bickering, magnificent goddesses before the bewildered young shepherd. Hermes presents the golden apple and explains the task. Paris must look upon the three most powerful goddesses in the universe, in all their divine glory, and decide which one is the most beautiful. Paris is terrified. He tries to refuse, to divide the apple in three, but he is given no choice. He has been commanded by Zeus, so the contest begins. Each goddess, in turn, parades before him, but they do not rely on their beauty alone. They know this is a mortal they are dealing with, and mortals can be bribed. They each offer him a reward in exchange for his vote. Hera goes first. She promises him power. She says to choose her, and she will make him the king of all of Europe and Asia. He will have wealth and dominion beyond his wildest dreams. Then comes Athena. She promises him wisdom and glory in war. She declares to choose her, and she will make him the wisest of all mortals and grant him victory in every battle he fights. His name will be remembered forever as a great conqueror. Finally, it is the turn of Aphrodite. She has no interest in power, or she knows her own domain. Then she knows the heart of a young man. She leans in and whispers a promise that is simple, direct, and irresistible. She says to choose her, and she will give him the most beautiful mortal woman in the world to be his wife. She does not even have to say the name. Everyone knows who that is. Helen. For Paris, it is no contest. What does a young man living a simple life on a mountainside care for vast kingdoms or military strategy, but the love of the most beautiful woman alive? That is a prize he can understand, a prize that speaks directly to his heart. He hands the golden apple to Aphrodite without a second thought. Hera and Athena are enraged. They have been beaten, and by what they see as a cheap, vulgar bride, they turn their backs on Paris, their hearts now filled with a burning, eternal hatred for him, for his city, and for all his people. They will now be the implacable enemies of Troy, and they will not rest until the city is a smoking ruin. Aphrodite, meanwhile, is triumphant, and she has a promise to keep. She guides Paris back to Troy, where he is miraculously recognized and restored to his place as a prince. Then, she sets her sights across the Aegean Sea, towards Sparta. The goddess of love herself will now ensure that Paris gets his prize. The gears of fate have been set in motion. A beauty contest between three goddesses has just sealed the doom of a great city and countless lives. And Helen, living peacefully in her palace, has just been promised to a stranger, with no say in the matter at all. The judgment of Paris is a pivotal myth, a prequel to the Trojan War. Scholars often see it as an exploration of the conflicting values within Greek culture. Power from Hera, wisdom and glory from Athena, then love and beauty from Aphrodite. The choice of Paris for Aphrodite is often interpreted as a wrong choice, prioritizing personal desire over civic duty or military honor, and thus setting a tragic course. The story serves as a powerful illustration of how personal choices, especially when influenced by divine meddling, can have catastrophic, far-reaching consequences. Back in Sparta, life goes on, blissfully unaware of the divine drama and the fateful promise made on a distant mountainside. One day, a fleet of magnificent ships with purple sails arrives at the port. They carry a delegation from Troy, led by the handsome and charming Prince Paris, on a supposed diplomatic mission to foster good between the two kingdoms. Menelaus, as a gracious host bound by the sacred laws of Xenia, or guest friendship, welcomes them into his palace. He throws a great feast in their honor, and it is here, across the feasting table, that Helen first lays eyes on Paris. And you, in her place, see what she sees. He is not like the rugged, battle-hardened Greek kings she is used to. He is elegant, well-dressed, and carries himself with a gentle, almost artistic grace. He is, by all accounts, exceptionally handsome, and when he looks at you, his eyes are filled with an open, unapologetic adoration that is both flattering and unsettling. This is where the story becomes murky, a point of contention for poets and historians for thousands of years. What happens next? Does Paris, emboldened by the promise of Aphrodite, simply wait for his moment and abduct a terrified, unwilling Helen? Or is there something more complicated at play? Let us step into your shoes. As Helen, you are in a politically arranged marriage to a man who is a good king and a decent husband, but perhaps not the great love of your life. Your life is comfortable, predictable, and safe. And then, into this stable world, walks Paris. He is not just a man. He is a vessel for the will of Aphrodite. The goddess of love is actively working to fulfill her promise. The air around you in Paris seems to crackle with a strange energy. Every glance feels significant. Every polite word seems to carry a hidden weight. Aphrodite is stage managing this entire encounter, fanning the flames of attraction. Do you fall in love? Is it a genuine, overpowering passion, a force you are helpless to resist? The poets who want to portray you as a romantic figure would say yes. They would say that you, a daughter of Zeus, were swept away by a love as powerful and divine as yourself, and that you chose to leave your life behind for it. Or are you a more calculating figure? Do you see in Paris a more exciting life, a more glamorous court, in the famously wealthy city of Troy? Do you, as some of the more cynical storytellers suggest, willingly pack your bags, taking a significant portion of the treasure of Menelaus with you, and elope with the Trojan prince? Then there is the third, and perhaps most compelling, version of the story, the one that paints you not as a romantic or a villain, but as a victim. In this telling, you have no choice at all. After a few days, Menelaus has to sail to Crete to attend the funeral of his grandfather. He leaves Paris and his delegation as honored guests in his home, trusting them completely. This is the chance for Paris. With Menelaus gone, he confronts you. He does not ask. He takes. He forces you onto his ship, along with a vast trove of Spartan treasure, and sets sail for Troy before anyone can raise the alarm. Let us stay with this version for a moment. You are on the deck of a Trojan ship, watching the shores of Sparta recede into the distance. The wind fills the sails, a wind sent by Aphrodite to speed their journey. You are terrified, confused, and utterly powerless. You are once again what you were as a 12-year-old girl, a kidnapped prize. Your beauty has made you a target, and this time, the man who has taken you believes he has a divine right to you. The promise of a goddess has become your prison sentence. The journey to Troy is not a direct one. In some versions of the myth, the fleet is blown off course and lands in Phoenicia or Egypt, where they spend several years before finally making it to Troy. This detour, especially the Egyptian version, is a fascinating point of historical debate. The historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, claimed that he was told by Egyptian priests the true story. Paris did arrive in Egypt with Helen, but the Egyptian king, Proteus, was so appalled by the violation of guest friendship by Paris that he arrested Paris, seized the treasure, and kept Helen safe in his own palace. According to this version, the Helen who went to Troy was a phantom, a ghost-like replica created by the gods to fool the Trojans and the Greeks. The entire Trojan War, in this telling, was fought over a ghost. It is a wild theory, but it was popular in the ancient world, most famously used by the playwright Euripides. It conveniently absolves Helen of all guilt, but in the most famous version, the Homeric one, you arrive directly in Troy. You are brought before King Priam and the Trojan elders. They are awestruck by your beauty as you stand before them, a living embodiment of the divine. They say that they understand. They understand why Paris did what he did. Such beauty, they murmur, is worth fighting a war over. And so, you are accepted. You are given a place of honor as the wife of Paris. But you are also a stranger in a strange land. The reason a fleet of 1,000 angry Greek ships is about to cross the Aegean. You are the beautiful, stolen treasure, now locked away inside the high walls of Troy. You can see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, a storm that has your name written at its center. You did not ask for this. You did not start this. But you know, with a sickening certainty, that you will be blamed for it. The storm arrives. When Menelaus returns to Sparta and finds his home empty, his wife gone, and his treasury plundered, his grief quickly turns to rage. He goes to his brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae, and demands justice. The news of the abduction of Helen spreads like a plague through the kingdoms of Greece. The time has come to invoke the oath of Tyndareus. Messengers are sent to every king and prince who swore that fateful vow years ago. They are reminded of their promise to defend the honor of Menelaus and to exact vengeance on anyone who wronged him. Some, like Odysseus, try to wriggle out of it. He feigns madness, plowing his fields with an ox and a donkey yoked together and sowing salt instead of seeds. But the clever messenger, Palamedes, places the infant son of Odysseus in the path of the plow. Odysseus swerves to avoid him, proving his sanity, and is forced to join the war effort. One by one, the kings of Greece gather their armies and their ships. An armada of over 1,000 vessels assembles at the port of Aulis, the largest military force the world has ever seen. All for you. You are now in Troy. You are treated like a princess. Yes, you live in the royal palace. You wear the finest clothes. You are addressed with respect. But you are a prisoner in a gilded cage, and the bars are forged from the determination of the Trojans to keep you. Paris dotes on you, but you can see him for what he is. Handsome, charming, but also selfish and cowardly. A man who would rather hide behind the walls of his city than face the consequences of his actions. You spend your days pacing the battlements of the great city, looking out over the plains below, and one day you see them. The sails of the Greek fleet, a forest of masts appearing on the horizon. The Achaeans have come. They set up a vast camp on the beach, a city of tents and ships that will remain there for the next 10 years. The war begins. You watch from the walls as men who were once your countrymen, some of whom were your own suitors, fight and die in the dust below. You hear your name being cursed by the dying Greeks and used as a battle cry by the Trojans. You are not a participant in this war. You are the justification for it. You are the face that launched 1,000 ships. A beautiful, poetic phrase that feels like a laid weight on your soul. Homer, in the Iliad, gives us a powerful glimpse into your psychology during this time. In one famous scene, the old men of Troy are sitting on the walls, their bodies too frail for battle, watching the endless, grinding conflict. They see you approaching, and one of them murmurs to the others that who can blame them? Who can blame the Trojans and the Greeks for suffering so long for such a woman? Her beauty is terribly like that of an immortal goddess. But then, they immediately add that still, as beautiful as she is, let her go home in the ships. Let her not be left here as a curse to us and our children. In that single exchange, they capture the entire paradox of your existence. They understand your power. They are awed by it. But they also recognize it as a poison, a paima, a thing of ruin. They want the beautiful object, but they do not want the consequences that come with it. You are brought to the Sci gate by King Priam. He asks you to sit with him and identify the great Greek heroes on the battlefield below. He is not angry with you. In a moment of extraordinary compassion, he says to you that, my dear child, I do not blame you. I blame the gods. It is they who brought this terrible war upon us. But his kindness is an exception to most others. On both sides, you are the scapegoat. The Trojan warriors, like the own brother of Paris, Hector, the noble commander of the army, treat you with a weary, pained respect. He sees the death and destruction your presence has brought upon his family and his city, but he directs his anger at the recklessness of his brother, not at you, his wife. Andromache, however, looks at you with undisguised bitterness. How can she not? Her husband will die because of a war fought over you. You are trapped in a limbo of guilt and helplessness. You did not ask for Paris to take you. You did not ask for the Greeks to come and fight for you. You are the still point in the center of a hurricane, blamed by all sides for the storm itself. The concept of a woman as the cause of war is a recurring theme in many cultures, but the Trojan War is the archetype. Historians and literary critics seamlessly debate the nature of the guilt of Helen. Is she a symbol of the irresistible chaos of erotic desire, a force that can overwhelm even the most stable societies? Or is she a commentary on how men project their own desires, ambitions, and aggressions onto a female figure, using her as a convenient excuse for conflicts that are really about power, wealth, and honor. The Iliad seems to lean towards the latter. The war is driven by the pride of heroes, the greed of kings, and the meddling of gods. You, Helen, are just the socially acceptable reason they give for all the killing. For 10 years, you watch. You see heroes rise and fall. You see Achilles, the greatest warrior of them all, slaughter Trojans in a divine rage. You see noble Hector slain, his body dragged behind a chariot. You are a spectator to a decade of carnage, and every death feels like an accusation. The face in your bronze mirror is no longer just beautiful. It is the face of a catastrophe. 10 years is a lifetime. The war grinds on, stealing the youth of a generation of men. Finally, the end comes, not with a climactic battle, but with a trick. It is a plan born from the cunning mind of Odysseus, the same man who designed the oath that started it all. The Trojan horse. You watch from the walls as the Greek fleet seemingly sails away, leaving behind only a gigantic wooden horse on the beach as a supposed offering to the gods. The Trojans, delirious with what they believe is victory, drag the massive statue into their city, despite the desperate warnings of the prophetess Cassandra, who, of course, no one believes, and the priest Laocoon, who is silenced by sea serpents sent by the gods. That night, Troy celebrates. The city is filled with feasting and wine, and in the darkness, Greek soldiers hidden inside the belly of the horse creep out, open the city gates, and let in the rest of the Greek army, which had only pretended to sail away. The sack of Troy begins. It is a night of unimaginable horror. The city that had stood for centuries is put to the sword and the torch. The men are killed, the palaces are looted, and the women and children are rounded up to be taken as slaves. In the midst of this chaos, Menelaus, his heart hardened by a decade of war and bitterness, hunts through the burning city with one goal: to find you and kill you. He has dreamed of this moment, of plunging his sword into the woman who caused him so much loss and humiliation. He finds you in the palace, perhaps with your new husband, Paris, who is killed during the fighting. Menelaus raises his sword. This is it, the final act of a 10-year tragedy. He looks at you, the cause of all his suffering, and he hesitates. The story goes that as he looks at your face, perhaps streaked with tears and illuminated by the light of his burning city, he sees the same impossible, divine beauty that had captured him all those years ago. Some poets say you bared your breast to him, a gesture of supplication, so devastatingly beautiful that his rage simply melts away. The sword falls from his hand. He cannot do it. He cannot kill you. Instead, he wraps you in his cloak and leads you away, not as a prisoner to be executed, but as a queen to be reclaimed. Your journey home is not a simple one. Like Odysseus, the fleet of Menelaus is blown off course, and you spend several more years wandering the seas, visiting strange lands like Egypt. Again, in some versions, but eventually, you arrive back in Sparta. The war is over. The oath of the suitors has been fulfilled. A generation of heroes is dead, and a great city has been turned to ash. And you, Helen, are right back where you started, queen of the Spartan court. What happens to you now? This is where the story splinters into different possibilities, reflecting the deep ambivalence of the ancient world about you. In the most famous version, the one told by Homer in the Odyssey, your life with Menelaus resumes with a strange, almost surreal tranquility. When the son of Odysseus, Telemachus, visits Sparta, he finds you and Menelaus hosting a feast, ruling together in opulent peace. You seem to be a gracious, poised queen, the perfect hostess. You even drug the wine with a special potion from Egypt that banishes all sorrow, allowing everyone to talk about the Trojan War and all its dead heroes without feeling any pain. It is a chillingly domestic scene, as if the past 20 years of chaos were just a bad dream that can be medicated away. In this version, you are fully reintegrated, forgiven, and you live out the rest of your days in peace, eventually being made immortal and joining Menelaus in the Elysian fields. But there are other, darker traditions. In some places, you are haunted by the ghosts of those who died. you are a figure of sorrow and guilt, living a life of penance. In another, more hostile version, you are despised by your people. After Menelaus dies, his sons drive you out of Sparta. You flee to the island of Rhodes, seeking refuge with an old friend. But that friend, a war widow whose husband was killed at Troy, blames you for her loss. She has her servant women disguise themselves as Furies, the goddesses of vengeance. They seize you while you are bathing and hang you from a tree. In this telling, you finally receive the punishment that so many felt you deserved. The question of the ultimate fate of Helen is a subject of intense scholarly interest because it reveals how different Greek authors and cities tried to grapple with her legacy. Was she a penitent sinner, a blameless victim, an amoral force of nature, or a malevolent spirit who finally got her due? There is no single, universally accepted answer. She is too complex, too symbolic, to be pinned down. She remains, to the very end, the beautiful, empty space onto which storytellers can project their own ideas about love, war, guilt, and divine will. You stand on the balcony of your palace in Sparta, looking out over all and now at peace. Are you the serene, forbidden queen, the haunted, tragic figure, or are you simply a survivor, a woman whose face was a battlefield for gods and men, who endured it all and simply came home? You look at your reflection in the bronze shield hanging on the wall. It is the face of a goddess, the face that destroyed a city, and you are left to wonder, for the rest of your unnaturally long life, was any of it your fault? The world will never agree on an answer. Let us step away from the grand, epic stage of queens and goddesses for a moment. The stories of Psyche and Helen are spectacular, but they are stories of the 1%, the extraordinarily beautiful, the royally born, the divinely connected. What about you? Not as a princess, but as an ordinary woman living in a Greek city-state, a polis, in the 5th century BCE. What if you were the daughter of a potter, a stonemason, or a merchant? What if you were simply a freeborn girl who, by a quirk of genetic fate, happened to be stunningly beautiful? In some ways, your life is even more precarious. You have no royal father, no divine brothers, no city walls to protect you. Your beauty is not a state asset. It is a personal liability. The greatest threat you face is not the jealousy of a distant goddess, but the very real, very present danger of mortal men. The threat of abduction is a constant, low-level hum in the background of your life. It is a known risk. You hear stories all the time, not just myths like the abduction of Helen, but more recent, local tales. A girl from a nearby village who vanished while picking flowers in a field. The daughter of a wealthy merchant who was snatched from her litter by pirates while traveling between cities. These are not just stories. They are warnings. Your world, for all its philosophical advancements and artistic brilliance, is a rough place. The rule of law is not always consistent, especially outside the main city centers. The roads between cities can be dangerous, prowled by bandits. The seas, the lifeblood of Greek commerce, are infested with pirates who see human cargo as just another form of profit. And a beautiful young woman is the most valuable cargo of all. Because of this, your freedom of movement is severely restricted. Your father and brothers are fiercely protective, not just because they love you, but because your honor and your purity are directly tied to the honor of the entire family. A spoiled daughter is a disgrace to the household. So, you live a life of seclusion. Your world is the oikos, the home. You spend your days in the Guinea Sea, the women's quarters, usually located at the back or on the upper floor of the house, away from the prying eyes of male visitors. When you do go out, it is rarely alone. You go to the fountain to draw water with the other women of the neighborhood. You go to religious festivals or to the wedding of a family member. And when you do, you are veiled. The veil is not just a sign of modesty. It is a practical tool of concealment. It is an attempt to make you invisible, to shield you from the appraising and potentially dangerous gazes of men you do not know. But what if a powerful, wealthy man sees you? What if one of the aristocrats of the city, a man with his own private guards and a sense of entitlement as vast as his fortune, catches a glimpse of you at a festival and decides he must have you. He might not resort to a crude kidnapping. He might simply go to your father and make an offer that is impossible to refuse. Your personal feelings on the matter are, to be blunt, irrelevant. Your marriage is a transaction between your father and your future husband, and your beauty has just raised your market price. You might be lucky and end up the wife of a rich man, or you might end up his concubine, a position with no rights and no security. And then there are the pirates. Piracy was a surprisingly common and almost respectable profession in parts of the ancient Greek world for a very long time. It was a fact of life. A pirate crew could raid a coastal town, and along with stealing grain and wine, they would steal people. The men might be sold as slaves to work in mines or on farms. The women, especially the young and beautiful ones, were destined for a different market. You could be sold at a slave auction in a bustling port city like Aegon or later, Delos. You would be forced to stand on a rotating platform while men inspected you like livestock, checking your teeth, your hands, your body, your beauty. In this context, would fetch a higher price, destining you for a life as a domestic slave, a concubine, or an entertainer in the home of a wealthy man. A life of servitude where your body is not your own. This is a stark reality that is often glossed over in popular depictions of ancient Greece, while we focus on the philosophers and Parthenon. The threat of enslavement was a real and present danger for a significant portion of the population. Historians debate the exact scale of the ancient slave trade, but it is clear it was a massive and integral part of the Greek economy. The stories of abduction in mythology are not just fanciful tales. They are a reflection of a genuine, deep-seated societal fear, one that was particularly acute for women. So, as a beautiful girl of no particular status, you learn to be afraid. You learn that open fields are dangerous, that lonely roads are to be avoided, that the gaze of a stranger can be a prelude to disaster. Your beauty does not feel like a gift. It feels like a vulnerability. It is the reason your mother tells you to walk with your eyes on the ground. The reason your father looks worried when the entourage of a wealthy man passes your home. It is a constant, humming reminder that in this world, you are a treasure that some men would rather steal than earn. The fear of abduction is so deeply woven into your cultural DNA that it forms the backbone of one of your most important and sacred myths, the story of the changing seasons. This is not a story about a queen or a commoner. It is the story of a goddess who becomes a victim, proving that no one, no matter how powerful her family, is truly safe. This is the story of Persephone. Persephone is the daughter of Demeter, the formidable goddess of the harvest, grain, and agriculture. Demeter is one of the most vital deities to humanity. Without her blessing, the fields would go barren, and the world would starve. Persephone, her beloved daughter, is a maiden of springtime, a being of pure joy and light. She is often called Kor, which simply means the maiden. You picture her as the essence of youth and innocence, her laughter echoing in fields of wild flowers. One day, Persephone is doing what she loves best, gathering flowers in a meadow with her nymph companions. The story says that Gaia, the primal goddess of the earth, conspired to help the god of the underworld. She caused a single, spectacular flower to bloom in the meadow, a narcissus so beautiful and fragrant that Persephone was immediately drawn to it, straying from her friends to get a closer look. As she reaches down to pluck the marvelous flower, the ground beneath her feet begins to tremble. A great chasm opens up in the earth, and from the darkness below, a golden chariot drawn by four black, immortal horses emerges. Driving the chariot is Hades, the grim, solitary god of the underworld. Hades is one of the three most powerful gods, brother to Zeus and Poseidon. When they divided the cosmos, he drew the short straw and was given dominion over the dead. He is a formidable, wealthy, and lonely figure, ruling over a kingdom of shades and shadows. He had seen Persephone and, in his lonely darkness, had fallen in love with her light. But he knew her mother, Demeter, would never consent to her daughter marrying him on moving to the land of the dead, so he resorts to the same tactic used by the mortal hero Theseus against Helen. Abduction. He grabs the terrified Persephone, pulls her into his chariot, and descends back into his gloomy kingdom, the earth closing up behind them as if nothing had happened. The abduction is swift, brutal, and sanctioned from the very top. In most versions of the myth, Zeus himself had given his brother permission to take Persephone, turning a blind eye to the kidnapping of his own daughter. This detail is crucial. It underscores a terrifying reality for women, that their fates were oft undecided by powerful men, their fathers, brothers, and husbands, without their consent. The will of the father god, Zeus, overrules the desires of the mother, Demeter, and completely ignores the will of the daughter, Persephone. The abduction of Persephone is not just a story about the desire of a god. It is a profound trauma that reshapes the entire world. When Persephone is dragged into the underworld, her mother, Demeter, is inconsolable. Her grief is not quiet or private. It is a cosmic force. She abandons her duties on Olympus and wanders the earth, disguised as an old woman, searching for her lost daughter. And as she grieves, the world grieves with her. The fields turn brown, the seeds refuse to sprout, the trees drop their leaves and bear no fruit. The planet is plunged into a perpetual, biting winter. Humanity begins to starve. It is a powerful, terrifying demonstration of the importance of Demeter. Her personal sorrow becomes a global catastrophe. Zeus, seeing that the human race he created is about to be wiped out, finally intervenes. He sends messenger after messenger to persuade Demeter to relent, but she is immovable. She will not allow a single thing to grow on earth until her daughter is returned to her. Finally, Zeus is forced to act. He sends Hermes, the messenger god, down into the underworld with a command for his brother Hades. You must release Persephone. Hades, bound to obey the decree of the king of the gods, agrees. But he is clever. Before he lets Persephone go, he offers her one last thing to eat, a single, glistening pomegranate seed. Persephone, perhaps out of hunger after her long captivity, or perhaps not knowing the ancient law, eats it. This single act seals her fate. It is a fundamental law of the old magic that anyone who consumes food or drink in the underworld is bound to it forever. They can never fully leave. So when Persephone is reunited with her ecstatic mother, their joy is cut short. Demeter asks her daughter if she ate anything in the underworld. When Persephone confesses to eating the pomegranate seed, Demeter knows her victory is incomplete. A compromise must be struck. Zeus himself mediates the final arrangement. Because she ate the seed, Persephone must spend a portion of the year in the underworld as the queen of Hades. The exact time varies in different versions of the myth. Sometimes it is a third of the year, sometimes half. For the remainder of the year, she is allowed to return to the world above and live with her mother. And so, the seasons are born. When Persephone descends to her husband in the underworld, Demeter grieves, and the world is plunged into the barren cold of winter. When Persephone returns to the surface, the joy of Demeter makes the earth bloom again, bringing forth the life and warmth of spring and summer. This myth provides a beautiful, poetic explanation for the cycles of nature, but let us look at it through your eyes. As a young woman in ancient Greece, what is the human lesson here? The story of Persephone is, at its core, the story of a girl who is abducted and forced into a marriage against her will. She is the ultimate victim. Yet, look at the consequence. She is now queen of the underworld. She holds a position of immense power. But what about her reputation? What about her identity? Before the abduction, she was Kor, the maiden, a symbol of innocence and spring. After, she is Persephone, the dreaded queen of the dead, a solemn and formidable figure. The experience has irrevocably changed her, and this reflects the harsh reality for mortal women in your time. If you were to be abducted, even if you were eventually rescued and returned to your family, you would not be the same person in the eyes of society. You would be damaged goods. Your purity, which is considered your most valuable asset for marriage, would be gone. It does not matter that you were a victim. It does not matter that you were blameless. The fact remains that you were, for a time, in the possession of another man. This creates a stain that is almost impossible to wash away. Your future prospects for a good marriage would be dramatically reduced. You might be forced to marry a man of lower status, or your father might have to provide a much larger dowry to make you an attractive prospect again. In the cruelest cases, you might be seen as unmarriageable, doomed to live out your days in the quiet shame of the home of your family. This societal double standard is a topic of significant interest for social historians. They examine legal texts and philosophical writings to understand the immense pressure placed on female chastity. The blame for an assault or abduction was often subtly, or not so subtly, shifted onto the victim. Was her veil not properly in place? Was she out in a place where she should not have been? Did she somehow invite the attention? The onus was on the woman to prevent the transgression, and if she failed, she bore a portion of the shame. So, while the story of Persephone ends with her gaining a kingdom, for a mortal woman, the story would end very differently. Your abduction would not make you a queen. It would shatter your future. The experience itself would be terrifying, but the social aftermath, the whispers, the pitying looks, the diminished prospects, would be a second violation, a slow, lingering punishment for a crime that was committed against you. It is a stark reminder that in your world, the reputation of a woman is as fragile as a flower, and once plucked, it can never be perfectly restored. So, you are constantly told that your beauty is a magnet for divine jealousy and a target for mortal predators. But there is a third, more insidious danger you have to navigate. It is not a physical threat, it is an intellectual one. It is the strange and pervasive idea, promoted by some of the most respected thinkers of your time, that your beauty is not just a physical attribute, it is a form of pollution, a dangerous, intoxicating force that can corrupt the minds of men and lead them to ruin. You might be sitting in the courtyard, listening to your brother and his friends discuss the teachings they heard at the academy or the lesson. They talk about Plato and Aristotle, names spoken with the utmost reverence, and you start to hear the ideas. They talk about the soul, about logic, reason, and the pursuit of the ideal state. But when the conversation turns to women, the tone changes. You hear them discuss the idea of Plato that, in a perfect world, women and men would be educated equally. That in the real world, women are inherently more prone to secrecy and cunning. You hear them quote Aristotle, who argued that women are, by nature, imperfect men, lacking the full measure of rationality that defines a male citizen. According to him, the courage of a man is in commanding, while the courage of a woman is in obeying. These are not just the misogynistic ramblings of a few grumpy old men. This is the bedrock of Western philosophy, and it is building a case against you, and your beauty is exhibit A. In this philosophical framework, the ideal man is one who is governed by his intellect, his reason. He keeps his emotions and his base desires in check. But female beauty, they argue, is a direct assault on this rational faculty. It is a the a bewitchment. It bypasses the logic of a man and appeals directly to his baser instincts, his appetites. It is like a powerful wine that can intoxicate him, making him forget his duties, his reason, his honor. You see this idea play out in the stories you are told. Think of the sirens, those creatures with the irresistible voices who lured sailors to their deaths on the rocks. Their song was a form of auditory beauty so powerful, it made men lose all control. Or think of Circe, the beautiful sorceress who transformed the men of Odysseus into pigs. She did not overpower them with physical force. She used her charm, her potions, and her beauty to reduce them to mindless animals, gratifying their appetites. Your beauty is seen as a tamer, more domestic version of this same dangerous power. It is a soft magic. It can make a wise man foolish. It can make a strong man weak. It can make a disciplined warrior forget his training. And the most dangerous part of this philosophy, if a man loses his self-control because of your beauty, it is somehow your fault. You are the one who caused his downfall. You are the temptress, the enchantress. He is the victim of your intoxicating presence. This line of thinking creates a buzz or paradox where the lack of self-control of a man is blamed on the woman, who is the object of his desire. She becomes the scapegoat for his own weakness. You see it in your own life. When you walk through the market and a man stares at you, his wife might pull him away, glaring not at him, but at you, as if you actively projected a beam of bewitchment to ensnare her husband. You are blamed for being a distraction, for provoking thoughts in men that they are supposed to be strong enough to control. The philosophical division between the rational male and the emotional and physical female is a foundational concept that has echoed through Western thought for centuries. Academics, particularly feminist scholars, have extensively analyzed how this binary was constructed in ancient Greece. They argue that by defining maleness as rational and self-contained, philosophers like Plato and Aristotle created a framework where feminines became everything that threatened that ideal: the body, the emotions, the desires, the irrational. Beauty, as the most potent physical attribute of a woman, thus became one of the most significant threats to the male philosophical ideal. This creates an impossible situation for you. You are expected to be beautiful. It is your virtue, your value. But if your beauty is too effective, if it actually inspires the desire it is supposed to inspire, it becomes a dangerous, corrupting force. You are simultaneously cultivated as a beautiful flower and condemned for producing a scent that others find intoxicating. You are walking evidence of the disorderly power of the feminine, a constant, living threat to the carefully constructed world of male reason. And this abstract, philosophical idea is about to have very real, life or death consequences in a famous Athenian courtroom. The philosophical idea that beauty is a dangerous, corrupting force is not just a topic for abstract debate. It is about to be tested in a real-life trial, a spectacle so famous that its story will be told for centuries. The setting is Athens, the heart of Greek democracy and culture, and the defendant is a woman named Phryne. You know of Phryne. Everyone does. She is not a respectable wife or daughter, hidden away in the Guinea Sea. She is a hetaira. The word is difficult to translate. It does not mean a common prostitute. A hetaira is a companion, a courtesan, often highly educated, witty, and sophisticated. These women are the exceptions to the rule of female seclusion. They can attend the all-male drinking parties, the symposia, where they are expected not just to be beautiful, but to contribute to the philosophical and political discussions. They are, in many ways, some of the most liberated and most controversial women in Greece. Phryne is the most celebrated hetaira of her time. Her real name is Mensurit, but she is known by her nickname, Phryne, which means toad, a strange moniker supposedly given to her because of her yellowish complexion. But her apparent flaw does nothing to diminish her legendary beauty and charm. She is fabulously wealthy, famously witty, and has been the lover and muse of some of the most powerful men in Athens, including the great sculptor Praxiteles, who is said to have used her as the model for his revolutionary statue of a nude Aphrodite. But her high-profile life and sharp tongue have made her enemies. One of them, a jilted former lover named Euthias, decides to bring her down. He concocts a serious charge against her, ISEBIA, or empathy. This is the same charge that was leveled against the philosopher Socrates, leading to his execution. It is a capital crime. The specific accusations are twofold. First, Euthias claims that Phryne has profaned the Eleusinian mysteries, one of the most sacred and secret religious cults in Greece. He alleges that she, in a mocking imitation of the rites, revealed some of its secrets at a private party. The second charge is more abstract, that she has corrupted the men of Athens, introducing a new, foreign god by setting herself up as a living incarnation of Aphrodite. So you find yourself, in spirit, in the packed courtroom of the Helii in Athens. The air is thick with anticipation. This is the celebrity trial of the century. On one side are the prosecutors, stern, moralistic men accusing Phryne of being a danger to the spiritual and moral fabric of the city. On the other side is Phryne, veiled and silent, as is proper for a woman in court. and her defender, an orator named Hyperides, who also happens to be one of her current lovers. The trial begins, and the prosecution makes its case. Euthias delivers a fiery speech. He paints Phryne as a blasphemous, arrogant woman who holds the gods in contempt. He argues that her lifestyle is a corrupting influence, that her claim to be a new Aphrodite is the height of hubris, a direct challenge to the gods that will bring divine wrath down upon the entire city. He is leveraging that deep-seated cultural fear you know so well, that comparing a mortal to a god is a crime that invites disaster. He is essentially putting her beauty on trial, framing it as a tool of empathy. The crowd of male jurors murmurs. The arguments are powerful. Empathy is a charge Athenians take very seriously. The fate of Socrates hangs in the air. Things look dire for Phryne. The jury seems swayed. Conviction, which would mean either death or exile, seems almost certain. Hyperides, her defender, takes the floor. He knows that logical arguments and legal precedents might not be enough to counter the potent mix of moral outrage and superstitious fear that the prosecution has stirred up. He needs to do something dramatic, something that will shift the entire emotional landscape of the courtroom. He needs to change the terms of the debate. He cannot just argue that Phryne is innocent of the charges. He has to argue that she is. In a way, beyond the judgment of mortal men, he delivers a passionate defense. But he can feel he is losing the jury. He is running out of options. He walks over to where Phryne is standing, her face hidden behind her veil, her body cloaked. Then, in a moment of sheer, desperate genius, he does something no one expects. The exact details of what happens next are a point of historical debate. The most famous account, which comes from later writers, is incredibly dramatic. Other, more contemporary sources give a slightly different version, suggesting Hyperides had Phryne herself reveal her face. Scholars argue about the theatricality of the moment. Was it a sudden, shocking act, or a more calculated, pre-planned piece of courtroom theater? Regardless of the specific choreography, the core of the act remains the same. A choice is made to deploy the ultimate weapon of Phryne, her beauty itself. The logical, legal arguments have failed. It is time for a direct appeal to a different kind of authority. The tension in the courtroom is palpable. Hyperides has finished his speech, but the faces of the hundreds of jurors remain grim, unconvinced. He knows that logic has failed him. He needs a miracle. He needs to appeal to a higher court. He walks over to Phryne, who has been standing silently, a modest, shrouded figure at the edge of the courtroom. The jurors watch, curious about what he is doing. He stands before her, and with a single, dramatic gesture, he reaches out and grips her tunic open from the shoulder. The garment falls away, exposing her torso. A collective gasp sucks the air out of the room. The murmuring stops. There is only a stunned, profound silence. The jurors, who moments before were ready to condemn a blasphemer, are now confronted with a sight they have only ever seen in their temples. Rendered in cold, perfect marble, they are looking at the living, breathing form that inspired the most famous statue of Aphrodite in the world. It is not a lewd or vulgar display. The stories emphasize that it was a moment of shocking, almost religious awe. Hyperides, his voice rambling with either real or feigned emotion, turns to the jury. He does not need to say much. He gestures to the silent, still figure of Phryne. He declares to the men of Athens to look upon this woman. Can you truly believe that the gods would place such a corrupt and impious soul within a body of such divine perfection? This is not the vessel of a blasphemer. This is a masterpiece of the gods themselves. He is making a brilliant, audacious argument, turning the entire case of the prosecution on its head. The prosecution said her beauty was proof of her hubris, her attempt to rival a goddess. Hyperides argues that her beauty is proof of her innocence. He is invoking the old, deep-seated belief of Kalokagothea, that the beautiful and the good are intrinsically linked. He is suggesting that a body this perfect cannot house a wicked soul. To condemn her would be to find fault with the work of the gods. He goes further. He calls her Hyperion, a higher ray, a priestess and servant of Aphrodite. This reframes her entire identity. She is not a rival to the goddess. She is her earthly agent, her representative, the honoring friend. The men of Athens were, in fact, honoring Aphrodite. Her beauty was not a personal vanity. It was a divine reflection that she had been chosen to carry. Therefore, to punish Phryne for being beautiful and for being worshipped for, it would be the real act of impiety. It would be an insult to Aphrodite herself. The jurors are stunned into submission. They are looking at what they consider to be the pinnacle of creation. Their philosophical ideas about the corrupting nature of female beauty are suddenly clashing with a much more ancient, more primal reverence for the divine made manifest. To sentence this woman to death would feel wrong on a visceral, almost superstitious level. It would be like taking a hammer to the most beautiful statue in the city. The gamble of Hyperides is a masterstroke of psychological manipulation. He has shifted the trial from a legal proceeding to a moment of aesthetic and religious judgment. The question is no longer did Phryne break the law. The question has become do we, mere mortals, have the right to pass judgment on a woman who so clearly enjoys the favor of the gods. He has taken the abstract fear of divine wrath that the prosecution was using against her and turned it back on them. He implies that, if they convict her, they will be the ones angering a goddess. They will be punished for failing to recognize and revere the divine beauty that Aphrodite had placed in their midst. The jurors are overcome by what the ancient writers call a daemoniae, a superstitious dread. They are afraid to condemn her, afraid to challenge the silent, powerful testimony of her physical form. They had walked into the courtroom as judges. They were now being made to feel like a congregation, and Phryne was the icon at the altar. The final defense rests not on words, but on a single, powerful image, an image of such startling perfection that it short-circuits all rational argument and appeals directly to a sense of aunt fear. The fate of Phryne now lies in the hands of these men, who must reconcile their laws with the overwhelming evidence of their own eyes. The strategy used by Hyperides is a source of endless fascination for classicists and legal scholars. Did he genuinely believe in this argument? Or was it a cynical, last-ditch piece of showmanship? It highlights the tension in Athenian society between its developing legal rationalism and its deep-seated traditional religious beliefs. The trial of Phryne becomes a flashpoint where these two worldviews collide. It demonstrates that in this culture, even in a court of law, that appeal to divine evidence, presented in the most dramatic way possible, could still trump all other forms of argument. It was the ultimate mic-drop moment of the ancient world. The silence in the courtroom finally breaks. The jurors begin to stare, looking at one another. Their faces a mixture of awe, confusion, and fear. The chief magistrate calls for the vote. Each of the hundreds of jurors has two small discs, one with a solid center and one with a hole in the middle. To vote for conviction, they drop the disc with the hole into a bronze urn. To vote for acquittal, they use the solid one. They file past the urns, shielding their discs with their hands to keep their vote secret. When the ballots are counted, the result is a stunning reversal. Phryne is acquitted by a significant margin. The verdict sends a shockwave through Athens. The outrageous, theatrical defense of Hyperides worked. He rolled the dice on a single, powerful idea, and he won. But what, exactly, does this verdict mean? On the surface, it is a victory for Phryne and her defender, but as you process the event, you realize it is a strange and unsettling kind of victory. She was not acquitted because the jurors believed she was innocent of the charges. She was not acquitted because Hyperides presented convincing evidence or a brilliant legal argument. She was acquitted because her beauty was literally judged to be superhuman. The logic of the verdict is this: no mortal being could possibly be this perfect. Such flawless form, such divine proportions, could only be the work of a god. Therefore, Phryne must be under the special protection of Aphrodite. She is, in a sense, divine property, and for mere mortals to pass judgment on her, to find fault with her, or to condemn her to death would be an act of profound hubris. It would be like criticizing our own masterpiece of a goddess. The jurors acquitted her not out of a sense of justice, but out of a sense of fear. They were afraid of the divine retribution that might follow if they dared to harm the chosen vessel of Aphrodite. This sets an incredible precedent. Your beauty, if it is judged to be divine enough, can literally place you above the law. It becomes a form of divine immunity, a get-out-of-jail-free card from the gods themselves. But think about the flip side of that coin. This verdict does not affirm the humanity of Phryne or her rights as an individual. In fact, it does the opposite. It strips her of her human agency entirely. She is no longer a witty, intelligent, and complex woman who made her own choices and her own enemies. She has been reduced to a beautiful object, a passive vessel for divine power. Her mind, her words, her actions, none of them mattered in the end. Her body was the only piece of evidence the court was willing to consider. Her acquittal was not a vindication of her character. It was a divine right of beauty. You see how this connects back to the stories of Psyche and Helen. The beauty of Psyche caused her to be worshipped, then punished, and finally transformed into a goddess to neutralize the threat. The beauty of Helen was treated as a divine force of nature that caused a war, for which she was both blamed and absolved. And now the beauty of Phryne has made her untouchable by mortal law, effectively turning her into a living statue, a sacred object, to be revered and feared, but perhaps not to be treated as a fellow human being. In all three cases, extreme beauty removes the woman from the normal sphere of human interaction. It elevates her to a strange, isolated space where she is no longer judged by human standards. It can save her life, as it did for Phryne, but it is a salvation that comes at the cost of her personhood. After the trial, the fame of Phryne only grows. She becomes an even greater legend. But the story of her trial serves as the ultimate illustration of the Greek attitude towards female beauty. It is a power, yes, a power so immense it can sway a court of law, override reason, and inspire religious awe. But it is a power that is seen as external, something bestowed upon a woman by the gods, not something she herself controls. It is a divine force passing through her, and she is merely the conduit. The historical accuracy of the bearing of the breast moment is still debated, but its cultural significance is undeniable. Scholars argue that whether it happened exactly as described or not, the popularity of the story reveals a court truth about the Greek psyche. It shows a culture grappling with the power of visual evidence and erotic spectacle, even within its most solemn institutions. The trial of Phryne demonstrates that the Greeks could simultaneously develop complex systems of logic and democracy while still being profoundly swayed by older, more primal beliefs in superstition, divine intervention, and the tangible power of beauty. As you reflect on this, you realize the final, chilling implication. If your beauty is just average, you are subject to the normal, often harsh, laws of men. If your beauty is exceptional enough, you might just be able to transcend those laws. But you do not get to be a person anymore. You become a symbol, a testament, a beautiful, silent miracle that everyone is afraid to touch. So here you are, at the end of our journey, standing in the long shadow of the Acropolis. You have seen it all. You have felt the chilling gaze of a jealous goddess, a gaze that can turn admiration into a curse. You have stood on the walls of a besieged city, a silent icon for a war you never wanted. Your name on the lips of dying men. You have felt the very real fear of the hand of the kidnapper, the rope of the pirate, the loss of your future in a single moment of violence. And you have stood in a courtroom where your own body was presented as the only evidence that mattered, saving your life but erasing your voice. You have come to understand the terrible paradox at the heart of your world. Beauty is worshipped here. It is a sign of divine favor, a virtue, a goal to be strived for, the pursuit of the beautiful, in art, in architecture, in the human body, is the engine of your culture. But to be the vessel of that beauty, to be a woman who actually embodies the ideal that everyone else is chasing, that is to live in a state of perpetual jeopardy. Your beauty is not a simple asset. It is a cage, a beautiful, gilded, and incredibly dangerous one. Its bars are forged from the envy of the gods, the desires of men, the anxieties of society, and the very philosophy that underpins your world. The first bar is divine jealousy. If your beauty is too great, you are no longer just a mortal woman. You are a challenger. You are a rival to beings who do not tolerate rivals. You become a Psyche, a target for the insecurity of a goddess. Your life turned into a cruel game of impossible tasks and heartbreaking loss. Your beauty makes you a trespass on sacred ground. The second bar is your status as a prize. If you are beautiful, you are desirable. And in a world where men take what they desire, your beauty makes you a target for abduction and conquest. You become a Helen, a Persephone, a treasure to be stolen, a justification for war. Your own will and desires rendered completely irrelevant. You are not a person to be won over. You are a territory to be conquered. Your face does not launch ships. It is the excuse men use to launch them for their own glory and greed. The third bar is social blame. Your beauty is seen as an intoxicating, dangerous force, a kind of magic that can strip men of their reason. If a man acts foolishly out of his desire for you, you are the one who bewitched him. You are Circe. You are a siren, a scapegoat for the lack of self-control in others. You are held responsible not for your own actions, but for the reactions you inspire in others. This makes you a convenient target for blame in a society that prizes male rationality above all else. And the fourth and final bar is the loss of your own humanity. If your beauty is so perfect that it seems supernatural, you may, like Phryne, be elevated to a status beyond human judgment. But in this elevation, you are dehumanized. You cease to be a person with thoughts, feelings, and agency. You become a symbol, a sacred object, a living statue. You are revered, but you are not related to. You are admired, but you are not understood. You are safe, perhaps, but you are utterly alone, trapped in the cathedral of your own perfection. This is the prison of being too beautiful in ancient Greece. You are trapped between the impossible expectations of your culture and the terrifying consequences of actually meeting them. You are encouraged to be a masterpiece, and then punished for being one. Historians continue to explore this complex dynamic. Was this dangerous beauty trope a genuine reflection of societal anxieties, or was it a form of patriarchal control, a way to keep women, especially powerful and influential ones, in their place by constantly reminding them of the potential dangers of their own allure? The answer is likely a bit of both. The stories and social attitudes we have explored reveal a culture that was both obsessed with unterrified by female power, and beauty was seen as the most potent and unpredictable form of that power. You look at your own reflection one last time, not in a bronze mirror, but in the tranquil surface of a fountain pool. You see the face that has been the source of so much trouble, so much fear, so much unwanted attention. It is a gift, they told you, but it is a gift that you can never refuse, a gift that you can never return, a gift that comes with a price so high, you will spend your entire life paying for it. A gentle quiet now settles over the ancient city. The sharp shadows of the afternoon have softened into the long, deep blues of twilight. The sounds of the agora have faded, replaced by the distant chirp of crickets and the soft coo of a nesting dove. The air, once hot and dusty, is now cool and carries the scent of night-blooming jasmine from a hidden garden. You can feel the day releasing its grip, the world exhaling a slow, contented sigh. You are no longer on the windswept plains of Troy, or in the terrifying halls of the underworld. You are simply here, in the stillness, a gentle presence drifting on the edge of sleep. The weight of the stories begins to lift, the characters and their tragic fates dissolving like mist. Helen, Psyche, Phryne, their names are now just echoes in a vast, quiet space. They fade back into the myths from which they came, their struggles over, their stories told. The moon, a pale sliver, rises over the dark silhouette of the mountains, its light touching the marble columns of the silent temples, making them glow with a soft, ethereal light. A gentle breeze, a whisper from the sea, stirs the leaves of the olive trees outside your window. It is a sound as old as the hills themselves, a lullaby that has soothed generations into slumber. You feel the tension leave your shoulders, your thoughts slowing, stretching, becoming thin and transparent, like clouds drifting across the night sky. You are floating now, in that peaceful, weightless space between wake of sunnies and dreams, a safe harbor where the troubles of the ancient world cannot reach you. Your own breath is a slow, steady rhythm, a quiet anchor in the deep ocean of the night. Sleep is coming for you now, a gentle tide, ready to carry you away to a place of perfect peace and rest.